We're live. Hey, everybody. Thanks for checking out my weekly stream. My Saturdays at 9 o'clock PT Pacific time. Working on my OS in the browser. That's what I've been doing this year every week. This is the 27th week, I think. Episode 27. And yeah. I have no notes for today. I'm pretty much the least prepared I've ever been for an episode. I'll just jump right to my notes here so you guys can see. So we've discussed the hey everybody. We've discussed this. What next, right? Luckily, I do have a big commit. That's what I've been doing pretty much every week, where I make another branch off of the main branch where I'm making all of this work. And I've got some things, as you see here. I've done 27 different commits on this branch. So we're going to kind of go through them and try to figure out what the heck it is I've done this week. I've had this week off, actually, for the most part, except for Monday. So had a nice little bit of a vacation, as much as anyone can have a vacation that has two kids, you know. So that kind of vacation. But yeah, so like I said, thanks for tuning in. And I think we'll probably just jump right into it. Feel free to throw some messages in the chat, throw me a comment. If you like these videos, please throw me a like. If you'd like to subscribe, that'd be great too. I'm always happy to have some subscribers, because kind of motivation makes me know that people are interested, kind of just supports me, you know. It's like, oh, the more of those subscribers, it's like, oh, cool, there's all these people that I kind of I don't have to do stuff for, you know. That's not the right word for it. It's exciting to be like more people that I can kind of show different things I'm doing. So powered by Red Bull again, as usual, every week it seems lately. But yeah, I've been drowsy this week. I don't know if it's been allergy pills or something, so we'll see how far I go. Hopefully decent. Let's see, my zoom level's off here. Let's just zoom in a bit more so you guys can see it a bit better, hopefully. So yeah, like I said, I got this branch here for episode 27 that I've been working on, and I think the new format, before, what I was doing is I was going into files changed and just kind of trying to parse this entire file and be like, build commits based on that, but I don't know why I was doing that. So I'm just being a little less sloppy now with when I do commits throughout the week, so that hopefully these are somewhat cohesive and we can kind of follow through and figure out together what the heck it is that I've done here. Because I think I've done a bunch of stuff. I'm trying to remember. I think it's mostly refactors this week. Couple of features, couple little things like download and stuff. You see there's a few more notes over here in the finished pile. I think there's starting to be less notes over there, which is kind of cool. We got the ability to download files will be in this episode. I think we removed some lines we didn't need. Some interesting refactors anyways. I think refactors can be fun because it's like you go back and think about the code again. So we'll kind of see some optimizations that I've done, a bit more lazy loading when I had the opportunity. Just things I've been thinking about as I look through the code and be like, oh, should I do it this way? Or I always want the code to be consistent, but as you start getting hundreds and hundreds of functions and files and stuff, it's like, it gets harder to follow your own like logical rules, where you're like, oh, this file's getting too big, so I'm going to split these out. Or, you know, it's hard to just have rules where it's like, I'm always going to split this out, or I'm always going to, I guess you could do rules like the single responsibility principle or whatever, and every function is doing basically just one thing, but I don't know how realistic that is, depending on what it is you're doing. But we'll see. Anyways, let's dive into it. So first commit, what do we got here? I made the commit message a little hefty. What was it? What was the message here? Use set instead of array for checking if something exists from a known list, right? I think I'd found some bugs with like yet another tool. I'm always looking for tools to try to find new bugs. Oh, right, this is a cool one that I found. This is interesting. I didn't really know this, but if you look here, this is like a lesson for everybody, including myself, and perhaps I'm wrong. Oh, wait. Oh, no, what am I doing here? Okay, so two things. I've confused everybody. Actually, three things if I just want to mention random stuff. First off, this file keeps changing on me. I don't know if it happened with Next.js 11, but this file's been like, it added this once, but now it keeps messing with the file endings, and it's like fighting with Prettier. So I'm going to undo that. But several problems I have. So I'm in the wrong branch. I'm sorry, guys. I forgot to switch back. So I'm going to push this other commit that I had. So I guess I have a few more. I had one more commit. So if we go back to the browser here, when I said I had 27 things I've changed, I guess I have 28. So if I refresh, now that's 28, and there'll be one more here at the bottom. I guess it was just that. Pretty minor change, but I forgot to push it. That's very sloppy of me. And I wanted to switch back to my main branch here, the one that we do our work in. And now I have to kind of clear it up a bit. Usually I do this beforehand, but I forgot. So I get to show you guys how I switch branches. And this is totally unnecessary. Typically when you just switch branches, you can do like a yarn install to kind of get your packages back in line. But I've just gotten used to just completely nuking it basically, and just being very specific to get back exactly where I was in the last show. Because we know, hopefully, when we left off the last episode, it worked. So now I'm back on the redo branch. I've cleaned up all the generated folders, so those are kind of out of the way. I've remade the node modules folder by doing yarn install. I'm going to get yarn dev booted back up, and hopefully this thing will get back up fine and healthy. We're going to see here at the top in front of me in, I'd say, 3, 2, 1, work. Okay, it was more like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. But anyways, it's back. Okay, cool. So yeah, that's working again, and now we're on the redo branch again. So this is the current code, by the way. We got a start menu, we got all sorts of cool things. If this is your first time seeing it, you know, we got right-click menus. I can open up WebAmp here, and got a Winamp. It's called WebAmp there, but it's also Winamp. I might change the name of that. Got Linux here. It's not ideal, the sizing for this format. You can close it there. We got Doom. We got all sorts of stuff, and more to come, you know. But on that note, let's get back to being in the correct branch and looking at that change again. So again, this was what I wanted to talk to you guys about, was this, and show you guys one of my first changes. So the first thing here is this is an array, and I think I ran this. I'm trying to remember what the other tool was that I ran, because I made a note of it in one of these here. But I can't find it. Oh, Unicorn. That's what it was called. Unicorn JS. So that's the first little neat thing. No, not this. Unicorn linting? I don't know. Scanning. Come on, guys. Here we go. ESLint plugin Unicorn. I think I've disabled this because there were so many rules that I disagreed with. You see here there's a ton of rules. But it did help a little bit. So I have some consideration to put it in. I think what I had done is I did the main extend rule. Yeah, I think I just did this, the extend recommended. But I had to like disable 6 or 7 rules, which looked a bit sloppy. But it did help me catch a couple things that were interesting. And one of them was being this thing that I'm telling you guys right now, which was in this scenario here where like I have an array and it's just a list of numbers and it's a constant and I'm using it here to do like an includes check. They recommend that I switch these to sets and go new set and just wrap the array in that. And then instead of includes, we go has, like so. So basically it's the same idea as this includes, but by switching to set, apparently it's quite a bit more performant, and I've looked into it a bit in a few different Googlings, set versus, wait a second, set has versus array includes JS. See what they say here. JavaScript. I mean, maybe this would be of some use. Here's a guy here talking about some tests. Yeah, I don't know. Was it better? Look at here. Length of this includes took 1.3 seconds and has took 71 milliseconds. So, I mean, I think that, yeah, in the bigger cases, it's huge. In the case of mine, where I have basically 10 items, you can see here it's pretty much equivalent. But I think in general, it's nice to have this set way to do it. It does seem like it is legitimately more performant. And did I catch another one here? I got this one. And I think there was another one for the image file extensions as well, which I think is not on this page. It's on this file here. Yeah, let's switch this one to a has instead of an includes, and also switch this to a set instead of an array. Just because it's a little more quick in theory. I mean, this has more than 10 items, so maybe in theory this one would be legitimately a tiny bit faster. I see this complaining here in VS Code. I think that's just what happens when you kind of nuke node modules and then reinstall it. Sometimes VS Code doesn't really recover from that. In that case, I might just close VS Code quickly and that'll fix it. So there's another one here, mountable extensions. I think this one might be the one where I almost went a little overkill with it, but I think it's just where I'd like to stick with one consistent way to do these kind of things. So I've switched mountable extensions, but as you see, it's only 2 things. So it might even be slightly slower, perhaps. I'm not sure, or basically exactly the same speed. But now I've consistently, at least when using constants with arrays of values, I've switched to using sets and going with has instead of includes. I think that is probably not so bad, just as a general performance optimization to do. So that was all of those. Let's try to be a little more succinct with this message here. And let's just say converted arrays to sets. Although that's too general. Use has instead of includes with sets. Yeah. What if I do use? No, let's not overthink this. Done. That's good enough. All right. Let's at least make sure that I did it correctly. Yep. Did I fix this one? Yeah, I think I did. Mountable. There's image. There's mountable. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's not overthink it any further. Okay. So let's save that one there. Use has instead of includes with sets. Boom. Committed. And move on. Just walk away. So next one here, remove initial context. This is something I wanted to do for a while. So basically there's this file I had, where is it here? This here, initial context. And every time I added anything to any of the contexts, I was adding to this file. Can I see this? Yeah. And it was basically just a bunch of empty functions, and it's kind of useless. But it has some sense when it comes to like scenarios like this, where before I was just getting processed and I could have expected it to always be an object. Whereas now whenever I'm checking for it, I need to make sure to do default here or check it in some way, because it might be completely undefined because I'm no longer doing these initials. But I've decided to do that because it's just nice to get rid of this boilerplate stuff, and I'll just kind of catch the cases where it breaks. And I think this file here, I fixed some stuff, but I think there's some other things I need to fix. I might try to fix, because I think there's several other commits I did in these farther down ones, and I might try to at least add one of them. But we might have, some of our commits might have to be like follow-up commits, unfortunately, because of this format that I'm using here. So let's try to figure this out. So let's go to context factory first. So that's like the function I have that makes contexts. That allows me to make these contexts with this like generalized format, where I basically just say, give me a consumer, provider, and the use context, and then I'll export them as my sessions, and I only provide these two pieces. So now I'm even going to provide less, not even initial anymore, I don't think. So let's see what I did here. So I've switched from no longer using a type. This is where it got a bit tricky, was to do this with this generic type. It was working like this, but if I wanted to use the generic type within the function itself, which is what I want to switch to, then I pretty much needed to put this to not have a type and instead just put it all right here. So that's essentially what I've done. I'm actually just gonna do this throughout the episode, as I'm just gonna copy the changed file, and then I'm just gonna paste it so that we can look over the changes in VS Code. So I've changed context here so we can take a peek at what I was just saying that I did. So yeah, I've gotten rid of the type completely, and I've just applied the type stuff directly to the function. And one other piece I had to do was, instead of this, when you apply it directly to the function, for some weird reason, this is silly, I don't know why, is that you need to have this little comma here. So if I don't have that, it complains. Yeah, it just complains stupidly. So this is the hack that I found through Stack Overflow. If someone has a better way to define a function with this generic, other than, and to use it in a function, because as you see here now, I'm using T within the function. So before I had context here, and I was saying context, and then I was passing in that initial context that would have the type, but I already had the generic type here too, of what basically was in initial context. So now what I've done is I just take that generic and I'm passing it into the context here. You see, like that. And then I'm saying empty object as the type as well. And basically by doing those two things, it was kind of working for the most part. So yeah, you see in the context factory, I basically just applied the type here, had to add this silly thing, unfortunately, to fix to get it to work properly for TypeScript. None of this had to change as far as I recall. Yeah, nothing there changed. but I got rid of initial here. So now the context factory no longer has an initial state. And now the create context function applies the type here and also says that it's empty by default, but as the type, like an empty version of the type, which seems to work. So I thought maybe I would have had to do partial here or something. I don't know, but at the moment this seemed to be working. So at least that's step A of this process, is switching this context factory. And then now that the factory's changed, we kind of just go into the places where we use it, and we have to clean that up. So we don't need this here or initial. I think that's the basis of what I have to do in most of these cases here, is just, yeah, get rid of initial here, because we're no longer, because you see we have this type here already that has exactly what it is. So initial was just kind of passing in some empty defaults to everything, so that when you used it, it was a little safer. You kind of knew if you were deconstructing a variable that it was going to be there a little bit, a shallow version of it. There we go. So I've gotten rid of all the initials. I'm going to delete the initial file itself. This is the initial file. We'll get rid of that. And let's just double check if that was what I did. So yeah, I switched, there's the initial file. I switched this. Yeah, what was it? How many contexts did I just switch there? Let me make this bigger. The file system, the menu, the process, and the session. Yeah, file system, menu, here's the process, and there's the session. And then, yeah, so here's a few places where I had to add some defaults that weren't there before. So there was a few places, at least. Let me just try to find it here by doing a wonky search. There we go. That's the two places where it was. So we're going to set these. Yeah, so if this is, before this was always an empty object because of that initial thing. But now if you just pass object.entries something undefined, it is mad with that. It doesn't like that. So we're going to have to add a few more defaults, you know, here and there, but those aren't so bad. And I don't mind having those most of the time in comparison to having that massive file. So go back to, so that's that entire piece of that commit. But before we finish this commit, I wanted to double check. So we're here right now, but I think just like today or yesterday, I did one default state object. It might even have just been this most recent one here. I think it was involving Windows states, where it was another thing where I messed it up. Let me see here. Yeah, see, this one I have a default for Windows states, but there's two where I don't, I think. Yeah, this one here, I'm defaulting. No, that I am defaulting as well. Okay, maybe it's okay. Perhaps it's new code that I've added. If that's the case, I'll just fix it when we add it and whenever we get to that commit. I'll be a little less sloppy this time with it. Okay, cool. So then we're done that one. So let's go back to whatever that was. Remove initial contexts. Yeah. So we removed them. The code still seems to work. So in theory, we didn't really need those. And maybe I could do a yarn build because that was a big change. And yarn build usually picks up any mistakes you made. Not always though. But I think it does server-side generation too, which kind of is a little test as well. I also have a test. I don't have very many tests, unfortunately. I've been pretty lazy with that. I'm not sure when I'll get to those, you know? I think that's one of those things where people are always talking about writing tests, but they're just not as fun, I found. Like they're hard to... They're just not as fun, you know? So for side projects, they're a lot less used. Oh, here's another thing I'm going to do this episode. You see here that right now the bundle's 276 kilobytes. I've cut that back down to like 203 or something by doing some lazy loading. So that'll be some other nice optimizations we can go through. Okay, so it builds and everything, and if I do yarn test, it should at least do the most basic piece there, probably. There we go, cool. So yeah, let's just apply that. What did I call that? Removed initial contexts, yes. I'm happy with that commit, as it is right now. Tweaks suggested by Unicorn, okay. So these are pretty general, but let's go through these. Why is it okay? Right. I think that I went overboard with these nulls, setting of nulls. I think for refs they make sense, but I think I've been abusing them here. Let's double check. Yeah, so for refs here, it's perfectly sensible to do that because it complains otherwise. There's a ref. Oh no, here we go. So yeah, but for states, I think I don't need this. I should just get rid of these. There we go. So it has no issue with that as far as I can see. Yeah, nothing broke based on that. So it is true. I mean, it doesn't need to be null. It could also have just been undefined, which is basically what I'm doing here by making it undefined. And this just works, I think, with use state. It's assumed, yeah, it even shows here that it could be undefined, even though it's not. Yeah, it works. It figures it out, you know? So the null thing is kind of pointless there. But for the refs, it makes a difference. But let's clean it up for the other ones. So I'm just going to go through this list as well and just see. There's only a couple. Yeah, here. I'll go through them. We'll go through them side by side here. I'm just going to find that next one here. So for it looks like for the type here for v86, we're also going to clean up some types. So for WebAmp, I was making my own types for a lot of stuff, but I've decided what I'll do is I'll import the package. I make my own version of the WebAmp library to keep it more recent because the NPM build is actually outdated, but the NPM build has types that are pretty decent. So I'm just going to import them as dev dependencies just to use their types, basically. And I'm still going to have to do a little bit of typing myself because they are missing. They're a little incomplete, unfortunately, as far as I can see. So for this one here, this is another one we don't need like that. So the v86, rather than being or null, we can just say, hey, it's optional, you know? And then we need to clarify that where it is also, which is over here in the use v86 hook. So this is another state that doesn't need to be null. And then I have to also define somewhere else, I think that I haven't. Here we go. I also have to clarify here that the type, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit here, but I'm basically just changing a few use states from nulls to undefined because it's just less code. So I like doing that. I mean, when you see null, you're like, why does it need to be null? But when you see nothing, you don't think, why is it nothing? There's just nothing there to spark your thought, typically. Depends on the scenario, but in general, like I say, I overuse null for a few of these. Here for WebAmp CI, same thing. This could just be or undefined, but for the ref, it's reasonable that it could be null. That's how it works. I think there was another change here. No, that was it for that. No, I'm wrong. Here, again, same problem. Don't need to go null for states. Yes for refs. And did I do another change here? I'm seeing oh, right. Okay, there's two changes. So if you remember this commit, I almost feel like these are two separate things. I like this removing nulls from use states. I'm going to do that as one change. But then I'm seeing here, if you remember, this commit was about, like, what was it called? Tweaks suggested by that unicorn code suggestion. And it's also done one here where it didn't like me doing .length. It wants me to be explicit and say, like, greater than 0, you know, and not just assume, like, 1 equals true kind of thing. Doing it that way. I kind of, once again, I agree. I like the explicit to be explicit with that kind of stuff. I'm actually going to change the way this is written later on to not be based like that, and it's going to be a lot cleaner in a couple commits from now. But for now, I do want to capture fixing this concept of having just length and making it very clear that I'm doing it's about how many of a length there are, you know, not the fact that 0 is falsy and 1 is and up is truthy. Because I think -1 is truthy too, possibly. I might be wrong on that, but it would never be length -1 anyway, so that's irrelevant. But you just don't want to get in this habit of assuming that a number is either going to be, it'll be positive, true, negative, false kind of thing, you know? So you can see here that I've changed that a few times. What other one have I done here? Oh man, I changed a few things. Like Unicorn didn't tell me to do anything here, I don't think. Oh, I think this was just me hating this that I did. Unfortunately, this commit is a little bit loaded with a few things. This one here is another one that's wrong. Let's just clean up these null refs first, and we'll deconstruct this commit as a few commits. Because I want to be cleaner with my commit messages. So first off, let's find this timeout here. That's the next one, if we're just dealing with these null ones. So this is a ref. Before I said the refs I like null, but specifically I like the refs where it's an element. This ref is referring to the node timer. Does it even need to be a ref? I guess ref works fine here. You could almost use like a use state. What's the difference, right? Well, this works, but yeah, there's something oh no, wait, interesting too. because now I'm doing null here. I think in general, I just want to move away from null. I think null has more meaning than undefined. So that's again why I want to get rid of it here. So here now it's undefined. And then here I have to specify setting it to undefined. I don't know if there's a shorthand for setting something as undefined. But I think it's just about getting away from using null when I don't need to. I wonder if useRef for the elements could be undefined instead of null. I'll stick with null. I think at one point someone or something suggested I do it that way, so I'm not going to mess with that logic. But I'm not going to push it too far. So it looks like again here for FS, I've also decided to do the same thing. Another good choice. Yeah, all of these states that never really need to be null. It either is something or it isn't, but null is like something else kind of almost. Specify it here as well. At some point, if I do or nulls, I should just see use refs, you know? That's my hope. Yeah, the word ref should be on almost every one of these. Looks like it is now. Div, HTML, HTML. Yeah, they all should have HTML. Here's another two, I guess, that I also could fix. Did I fix these last time? I may very well have. Actually, I'm not sure I did. Interesting. Were there any others? That's HTML element. This one here, R&D refs. Oh no, that's also an element in the end, I think. Is it? Yeah, totally. Although I'm a little confused, but let's just say, okay, it is. Does it need to be though, hey? When do I set this? Where is this? Oh, okay, totally, it's an element. So yeah, the only other two that I noticed were these, and I'm not sure I actually captured these when I was doing it here. That's another good change, but again, that's something else. So we just did this one. Yeah, I never got those other two. I don't know why Unicorn didn't catch these, but there's these two here. I also want to change these as well then, because I think it's the same scenario. These are Node.js timers, so we've decided to use undefined in those cases. Oh wait, what happened here? Was this unrelated? That is unrelated. That I think is VS Code still being a bit glitchy. I'm going to close it in a second, in fact. Does this make sense? Yeah, I think so. Clear timeout. Clear timeout current. That's not how I did the double click one though, right? The double click one looked a bit different. Why am I doing, I'm setting undefined here. I wonder if yeah, it's interesting. I clear the timeout here and then I set undefined. I guess that's because I'm checking it. Yeah, that's because I have an actual condition where I check it within the timeout, I think. Is it within the timeout? What am I doing with timeout here, or timers? Oh, I guess it's just so the next time double click occurs. So this is something that's going to run multiple times, whereas with window peek, oh, if your mouse leaving, you're pretty much ditching, so it's the end of it. Right, so I don't have to worry about resetting this, I guess, in this case. Because when I hide this, the whole element's going to not need this hook anymore, I guess. I could be wrong about that. I guess I could put this here and check here to see. Let's take a peek at that. I wonder if this should be like undefined. When would this be undefined? Not there. Maybe here it would be undefined, you'd expect. Yeah, because here I'm defining it, so you would expect here it would always be undefined. So if I do a bunch of window peeks, should I see undefined a bunch of times? Hopefully. Oh wait, am I even running the server? Nope. Probably going to help to run it if we want to access it. Got to boot up. There we go. So let's see. Let's open up a window and then do some window peek. Undefined. Oh, 27. 30. Huh. I wonder if that's okay. Maybe that was always okay though. I mean, here it'd be okay. So then you mouse enter again. So that ref still existed, I guess. Okay, fine. You're changing it here to make a new timeout. And did you ever clear it here though? That's a good question. Let's make sure it's actually clearing these, because that's pretty darn important. I think it must be. Let's say clear and start. refresh this. Let me jump back to this here, open this. So, okay, start undefined, clear. Start 27, clear 31. Start 31, okay. I think in that case it's okay. I feel like for the double click thing, it actually mattered more. Yeah, because you're checking if this exists. In my other one, I don't care if it exists, I just overwrite it. Whereas this one, if it exists, the timer exists, that means you've already done a single click. So yeah, it's not exactly the same logic, so I don't have to worry too much there. Let's clean this up. And let's just to confirm that this isn't broken, this piece, I'm gonna close VS Code and open it again. Because as I was saying, VS Code acts up sometimes. Switch back to me for a second here, and then I'll switch back to the OBS streaming window. So we got this running again. Let's run the code again. And if we hover over this now, see now it knows it's a string, and it knows what 2PNG is, and now it's not complaining about React or anything. So it's just VS Code being silly again. I think some combination of pressing these things down here can fix that, but I don't know what. Let's try to refresh here. Okay, so it's working again. Peak still works, yeah. Cool. So that seems okay. So where does that put us for changes? Let's double check what we got here. So we've changed. Oh, why is this broken now? Let me refresh. There we go, that's fixed. So yeah, we just basically did the null removals and switching from or null to optional whenever we could. So yeah, I think there we're just favoring undefined versus null whenever possible. And I think in the case of HTML elements, it's not necessarily possible or it's not ideal. But if we look at or null now, every one of these is like an HTML element it's referring to now. So I think we've done our due diligence here to make sure to try to catch them. So let's say nulls, or let's say prefer undefined to null. There we go. And we just save that in our notes. If we can close all these millions tabs we had open. I think in theory that's the third commit. Feels like a bunch. So we just did a few things there, but I'd also like to do more from that same commit. So the first one were these length things. Let's be explicit with our lengths. So I'm going to search whenever I did .length, that where it mattered, where I was doing comparisons. Here's one of them. So in this case, I want length to be greater than 0 is what I was checking for. That was one of the examples. This one here, some of these I'm doing math and it's perfectly fine to be used the way it is. Here again, oops, greater than 0 was what I wanted to do there. Here we go. So files.length doesn't equal, or wait, equals 0, I think was the logic there. Yeah, because it was no length. So that should be 0. It should equal 0. And this one, it should be greater than 0. So there's those, that just made those two more explicit, I think, versus trying to make them into Boolean logic when you're talking about a number, basically. Same here, greater than 0. That's math. And this one too, greater than 0. Hopefully I did those correctly, logic-wise. And are there any more that are mine? These are all libraries that I don't care about. Cool. So explicit length checking. That is how I'd like to call that. Yeah, I think in the future we'll probably add this unicorn tool as a main thing. I might even make it as a next stream thing. Add unicorn to ESLint rules, because it'll help us catch these times where I have done it. That's the one thing I like about these linting rules, is not letting any of these things slip by, even though they're minor. You know, the less of these you have, the more it's like easier to reason about this stuff, I think. So we just did all these. So what was this? This I really don't even feel like was a unicorn change, but we can do it really quick. I think something was wrong about the logic here anyways. Let's double check this. So I had is maximizable. I think that's wrong. I think that's like isn't maximizable. Yeah, if you auto resize and you don't lock the aspect ratio, then we can't maximize. So when you double click on the header, oh, sorry guys. Darn it, I didn't notice I hadn't jumped to the code. So here, this is maximizable. I think that's wrong because I'm saying here, if you click the header and it's maximizable, then do nothing. Otherwise, maximize. That should be flipped if this Boolean made sense. If it's maximizable, then allow maximize. So that was just wrong. That should have been called disable maximize. And then here for disable maximize, this, I don't want this to be a function. I wanted this to just be undefined. And I actually wanted it to be out here like this, basically. Now the issue with that is that you can't have the hooks be conditional. So it's going to complain about the hook because it's on a condition here. So for that reason, we're going to do the hook every time. And we're going to call it maximize click. So it's a double click hook. Maybe I should call it maximize double click then. And we'll put that there. There we go. So yeah, so now the maximize double click function is a hook that does the double clicking. Why is it a hook again? I don't recall. Does it need to be? Almost doesn't, really. Why is this a hook? Just for that use ref timer? I feel like this could have been done with some scoping or something. Maybe what I'll do, I'm just going to keep it for now because it's fine. But again, another next stream thought. Does use double click need to be a hook? Good question. And so yeah, we're going to use maximize double click here as well. Oh wait, no we're not. What am I talking about? For disabled, we were going to fix it. Ah, yes. So the disabled, yeah, again, the logic here. So the maximize button was disabled if is maximizable is true. What was I thinking there? So I prefer to call it disable maximize. Why is it complaining? There we go. Boy, that was some slow IntelliSense there. Unfortunately, I don't know why. So that fixes that logic. And now this is a little more clear and we don't have this fake function to do nothing. So if it's undefined, it just won't even have a click handler versus having a click handler that does nothing. That's preferable, I think. And is that, yeah, so disable maximize, it's undefined, otherwise maximize double click. Okay. That'll just be a commit on its own. I'm just gonna say fixed title bar maximize logic. Yeah, or let's say improved. Let's not be so rough to say fixed. Was it broken? Not really, I guess. But if you read it and expected the code to make sense, then it was broken. So this one is done. What other things did I sneak in here? So this was the only other piece, was that I was using find here, but it's kind of, and I'm using it in Boolean logic here. I should just use sum. And you know what? It's totally right. There's another little good catch by it. So yeah, here I needed find because I care about the ID, but here I was just caring that it existed somewhere within the array. So I was just looking for it. Is it there? Okay, true. It's there. Nice. So there we go. That we'll call prefer sum to find when applicable, obviously. Okay, there's another fun little commit. This is the refactor episode, I guess. There's one every month, it seems, of just like refactors as I add more linting rules. Simpler use file info. Oh, this sounds fun and somewhat big. Yeah, this is somewhat big. What have I done here? What have you done? I think I did this extension stuff last episode and I've just moved it into its own file now. Yeah, exactly. Oh, and then I did a bunch of other stuff. Oh, okay. I see what I've done. I've kind of moved everything. I want to make sure that what I've moved is what I've expected to move. Let's do these one thing at a time here then. So first off, this extensions thing. I just want to make sure that it's the same thing though too. Yeah, I think it is. So I basically just took this. Well, let's confirm. Let's take it right here and go into the code. Where was this anyways? Let me close these files here and find where this was in the code. System, files, oh man, it's really in there. Components, system, files, file entry. Here we go. So I'm gonna make a file called extensions. It's gonna just be about the extensions. And it can be a TS file. Yep. And I'm just gonna paste it in here as is. So that's basically the file, but I wanna double check how it compares to where I just took it from, which was here, I believe, yeah. So this, I believe, was the code I took, and I just moved it into its own file. What I'm gonna do is make a little file here, and then in VS Code, we're going to go into the editor piece, and we're gonna compare the extensions to the piece that I just changed and compare them. Yeah, so you see it's identical. Only thing is I didn't do the export here, and now I'm exporting it as a default. In extensions, I just do the export here at the bottom. Otherwise, it was a complete just removal, and I'll just try to auto import here, but it might not work. It partially did. Not happy with that import, so I'm just going to copy the one that I already had written down. There we go. Let's do these in a couple steps, actually, because that was just a really simple one right there that I just did. What did I just break? Why is it complaining? Maybe there was more than one piece to this? Oh, extensions. Oh, okay, I just need to fix the import. Somewhere else I'm importing extensions. Here? Or several places? No, just here. So let's just fix this to be that. And it should be fixed. Reload. There we go. Okay, cool. So the extensions are fixed, and now I've extracted them. So instead of them being part of this functions, which is pretty generic, now we just have two functions here, and we have another file called extensions, which is kind of my definition of the extension type, which just has, it's like this icon process. We discussed it in the other episode. So, and here I've had to fix where I was using extensions. I use it to do my open with command to know what other things something could be open with, and just to keep track of extensions. So we're going to say extracted extensions. Extracted extensions into its into a file. Perfect. Couldn't have said it better myself. Except it was me that said it. So what next? So it looks like I changed quite a bit here. I think what happened here is that I've made these two functions, the one called getInfo without extension and getInfo with extension, and I've done that to split up this function here, this useFileInfo, which was quite big. Basically, it had this, if there's no extension, do this, and now I've made it the getInfo with, else, basically this entire thing. And it's that. So it's actually pretty straightforward, even though it looks like a bunch of code here. So let's double check if that is what that is. And I didn't need to do export anymore of these two things, because now getProcess and getIcon, I'm basically using in that function right here. But yeah, I want to make sure, let's double check this right here. We can just take this command. The thing I care about the most is that I'm not just copying code that's changed and not explaining it to you guys, because I wouldn't want to sneak anything past you. So that's why I want to copy the before and the after, and then just compare them here to be like, is it the same? Yeah. So right, I switched to using callback, and I pass in setInfo. So when it was here, setInfo was what mattered. setInfo, and now I've turned that into the callback in these functions here, where I say, give me a callback, and it's the dispatch to the file info, just at the state of the file info, basically. Same thing in both cases. I don't know what it's done with the formatting here. It looks a bit messed up, but there it is there. There it is there. So let's just make sure this one's not changed as well. And if that's the case, then I think we can just confidently copy it all over, is my hope. So that's the new one, air quotes. And then this is the old one, reverse air quotes. And we'll just do a comparison of those. And we see, again, it's just changing to the callback. And by switching it to the word callback, this became shorter? Or what happened here? What did I change here? Oh yeah. Okay, it's just a tiny bit shorter, I think, because it's indented one level less, and that's just enough for it to be okay to fit on one line, I think. Yeah, otherwise it's exactly the same, so nothing changed. So based on that, I'm just going to do a direct copy of the files. So what was it? Use file info here. So if I go to the browser here and I just find used file info, I basically removed a bunch of imports that were related to those functions that I've extracted out. So that was the used file info, and then the other piece was here, which was turning the functions file into this bigger one, into the one that has those other things. And I've kind of made the functions file a little big now. Here it's short, but then I'm dumping it all in here, so they both become pretty big files. So let's just double check our changes again. Close this, it's just in the way. So like I said here, we don't need to export these two anymore because they're just part of this now. And we've added those imports. Otherwise, these two functions are very simply the exact thing they were before. Shrink these down here. How do you shrink this? I can't shrink that one anymore for some reason. Anyways, these are the two functions. So yeah, info without extension, info with extension, which was basically, now it's very simply just this. And before it was all of that stuff that has now been split into those two functions. So I think that cleans that up a little bit, and it's also a simple change. And now we know it's like, if you don't have the file extension, you're going to do some kind of logic here. If you do have the file extension, the logic's going to happen here. Simplified used file info, or let's say simpler, or extracted functions from used file info. Let's say that. And quickly, let's just make sure there was nothing else. We just did that file. This one, wait, what was that one we just did? Yeah, we did that before in the previous commit. Yeah, that was all that commit was. So that commit had a few things in it, but we've split it into a couple commits, which is always nice. A couple different extractions, like pulling teeth. What's next on this massive list we have here? Don't recalc mem for v86. Right, okay, this was another decision. So I had this logic here that like, there's this thing called navigator.device memory that can be a number, specifically 8, I think is the maximum number it could even be. So I think I was assuming that if like someone had 8 gigabytes of RAM, I would take 1 gigabyte or something. Until further notice, I'm just going to assume everybody has at least 1 gigabyte of RAM. I think just to save myself having to do any kind of math even on this. So let's go into the v86 config. Oops, which is here, and we're just going to put these right in its place. So the memory size before it was like a multiple of this number here, which is I think like 1 gigabyte, and this I think is 32 megabytes. Yeah, that sounds right. And before I was doing like, let's say if you couldn't give 1 gigabyte of RAM because you didn't have 8 gigabytes, let's say you only had 4. What was the logic there? I don't know what the logic was even, honestly. I just don't want to do the math for that right now because in the end, what was given was a very minor number. Oh, so I never changed this here. Should I have? I don't know. I actually wanted to tweak this anyways. This here where it's like type of v86 config, that's redundant. We're already in the v86 folder. So let's just keep it as config. Put config here. And now those two things are in the config, so they don't need to be listed here. Wait, what happened here? Config is already declared. Oh, okay, I see. Let's call this the initial config or base config. We can call this v86 config, I guess. There we go. It doesn't even matter what this is called, so. But what was the other one called? So I can copy it. This. Okay, so we'll call this that rather than changing the import. I don't like changing the import. I think that's what I like the least about it. There we go. So now that doesn't have an as because that was pointless. And we need to remove a couple more memory things here. This one's good. This is hard-coded into the config now, so that'll work through the types. And here we don't need these anymore. So we don't need those. We don't need the memory ratio. So again, less code, always good. I think it was just a waste of time calculating that. So yeah, we don't need the types, mostly just red here. Nice. Remove memory calc from v86 config. That's partially what I did. Add that to the old show notes. What's next in our little configs day? Extract shortcut function. Ooh, this sounds interesting. What did I do here? Okay, nice and simple one. I think I was just like, I'm just like in an extracting code mood today too. This is like something sometimes when you build functions, they just start to get out of hand where you're like, I need this part and I'll need this and I'll need this. And before long you have like 120 line, 500, 800 line, 1000 line file. And you're like, this does a million things. And there is a way to organize it, but it's out of control. And by doing this kind of pruning here, I hope to not get it out of control, you know, to rein it in kind of. So I've made a function here called get shortcut info, and it's just going to take the contents, which are coming from here already. And we're just going to put this in its place here for the callback. And we'll get rid of this code here. Did I change anything about the code? No. So we don't need it here anymore. So you see that simplified that a bit and kind of cleans it up. And then we're just going to keep the function right above it here. Let's put it here, let's say. There we go. So it's pretty much the same thing. Actually, it was so much the same thing. Maybe I should just have trusted you guys enough to copy it here. So I'm still going to paste part of it here just to have the open thing here. I'll close this though. And let's just try that here. Let's take the constant, paste it in here, take the return value here, and paste it in there, and there we go. Yeah, and it does kind of reformat it a bit to be on a single line. So otherwise I didn't change anything here. I just took contents and did exactly what was happening before, but now we've kind of separated that out. So I like that that's a little more clean. So if it finds a shortcut extension, reads the shortcut, if there's a problem, just get a generic one. Otherwise, get the info here and then send it to the callback. And this one here, I think, does its own callback where it tries to figure some stuff out based on the stuff here. But the shortcut usually has the info already. Anyways, you don't need to know all that. That's why it gets the more I extract this out, the more someone looking at my code can be like, oh, okay. Let's copy that wording there. I'm perfectly happy with that. Yep, that's all we did. Extract shortcut function. Yes, indeedly. What's next? So that was all I did for those 2 days. On this day, tweak line height for Firefox. Right, this is something I noticed. I had a note on my board where in Firefox, the icon height looked just a couple pixels off. Something looked off. And what I found out was that line height is not necessarily consistent between Chrome and Firefox, and that using pixels kind of gives you a weird result. But some people were recommending this, and I saw that normalized CSS had like 1.15. And I tried a few things, and basically 1.2 looked exactly the same in Chrome, which was right because I was happy with how it looked in Chrome. But in Firefox, it changed it to look how it looks in Chrome. So basically, 15 pixels didn't work as good as 1.2 works. Don't ask me why, please. Let's just apply the fix. So I mean, I explained right to you guys right there the path I took to figure out this number a little bit, but I can't explain any further than that, I feel like. Fix Firefox icon line height. Line space height we can do here. Okay. What's next? That was a super minor one. I didn't do too much this day. Refactor. Oh, maybe I did do some stuff. Don't jinx myself here. What did I do here? Right. I think the use R&D. Oh yeah, a lot of the draggable, a lot of the logic could have been passed into the hooks more than was already being passed. Yeah, it looks like some of the default stuff I was doing, like here within use R&D, I had 2 hooks called use resizable and use draggable. But I was doing like this center position logic here, and I was doing I was doing logic that really only mattered to those hooks outside of the hooks. So let's fix these one at a time here. Let's just take the use resizable example. So what did I just change here? Basically only had to change this piece here. So the use resizable switched from being auto resizing and size to just give me the ID and auto resizing, and I'll figure out the size internally rather than you passing me some default. So getting the ID was the important part, because then I can do use session here and check if the window states based on the ID has an existing size. And if there's no size, then use default. Instead of here, I was using default before I checked it kind of, and I was doing the checking one step back, but I can just do it here. And I think here might've been one of the early parts where I made a mistake. Maybe here I'm assuming window states exist. So maybe here I needed to do that. That might've been what I broke in a previous one. So yeah, because we don't have initial states anymore, we need to make sure window states is checked. Anyways, that part makes sense there. So we'll need to pass ID now, and we don't need to pass size anymore. And now let's do the same thing for draggable as well. I'm just going to copy it and then paste it in so you guys can check out the diff with me. Where is it here? Use draggable. So right now it's extremely, oops, switch to the code, Dustin. So right now here, I get my windows open here, so I don't know if you guys can hear background noise. So yeah, look at the file here is very simple right now. And if I paste in the changes, and then we'll see here, there's some differences. Oh wait, what am I doing here? Wrong one. There we go. So this one here, there's how it was before. So basically what I've added is just the stuff so that I don't need to, yeah, before here it was like, give me the position already. Tell me if it's centered or not. I don't want that. Instead, I'm just going to do it here internally, because dragging it is all about position. So that position logic should be here as well. So what have I moved in? So now I check the theme to get the taskbar height. And I then again do the same thing with window states. And so once again, I need to double check here. I wasn't doing that. So window states could be undefined. So make sure it's default there. Get the ID. Now here I'm getting position, whereas before it was passed in. And then here I'm doing the same logic that I was doing in the R&D hook, where I try to get the center position or the default position. So I try to get that center position first. So I actually try three things here, because I look in window state and I try to get position here. But if this is undefined, it's going to try to default to one of these, either centering itself, or if for some reason centering fails, then default. Would centering ever fail? I don't see how it could. Yeah, so that one doesn't make as much sense. The resizable one makes sense, maybe. If there's no size, we need a default size. But here, if you're centering it, then do you need a default? I feel like you don't. How does center position work again? It always returns something. Yeah, maybe it's okay then. So let's get rid of default altogether here. The center position is the default in this case. There is no default window position. And if that's the case, we never need a default window position. Where else do we use it? Nowhere else that matters. So let's not even have a default window position. It doesn't make sense. My default is centered. I've got logic for that. The end. I think. Prove me wrong by crashing. Let's open this. Why? Center position. What? What have I broken here? What else did I need to change? Let's go back to the browser. So I just did, oh right, the R&D stuff, right. I'm not passing in the ID yet. So here's the logic here. So you see here was where center position was, and state position was here, and then here the hook was doing default before, if both of these were undefined, but center position never would have been undefined. So it never needed another default. Whereas for size, here, state size could be undefined. So we just looked at that code. This is just the removal of that stuff. And it should be the last step to making this work. So let's update the use R&D hook now to remove those things we no longer need. And if we check them here when this changes visually, drum roll, come on guys, there we go. Yeah, so it's as expected. We just pass ID to the hooks now, and we've moved that stuff here where I've shown you guys. So let's check it out. Let's open a window. Well, it opened. It looks like it already had a position that was not centered. Let's clear the cache and do a reload here where we have no existing position. So we open, there we go, centered. So yeah, nice. So in my code, I didn't even remove default, I think, but it's totally unnecessary. Excuse me, guys, the Red Bull's catching up with me there. So we move the positioning into draggable hook. We move the size defaulting into the resize hook. We removed it from the R&D generic hook, and we no longer need default window position. Nice. What did I call this in my commit? Refactored use R&D subhooks. Yeah, that's a good word for it. A good definition. Let's commit that. I'm happy with it. Don't want to overthink it. That's the key. That's one thing, almost honestly. I mean, I'm joking a little bit, but it's not perfect, you know? I probably missed something else, but that's what these refactor sessions are for, is to kind of go back and look at it more and fix things progressively. So how many more commits we got left here? We got another bunch of commits. So here's where I fixed some more nice bugs. Those are always nice. Fixed focus flicker. Oh, that's a hard one to say. Say that 5 times fast. On closing, right? Okay, let's recreate it here and show you the issue. So if we open a window here and we open another one, watch. So when I close this, I would expect the focus to move to this window, and then this one goes black, and it does, but then it quickly doesn't. Watch. Yeah, you see, it went black and then it went back to gray. And the issue for that ended up being related to this closing concept that I've got to do the transitions. Is like, it switches focus, but then the window that's closing for 250 milliseconds, when it closes, that was triggering another switching of focus to the window that no longer existed. And it was basically just losing all focus. So here's the very minor fix. I'm just going to apply it to use focusable, which is it's nice that it was in that hook, you know, nice place for it to have been. So within the use focusable hook, I had to do a little change, and we're just going to analyze it here. Come on. Too slow for me. So I've switched from right. This is another thing that we're going to notice a few times, is where I've gotten away from using defaults when possible. So here with process before, I had where I was trying to get the ID, and if I didn't get it, I was giving an empty process. And then I was also defaulting for all these. So minimize, default false, taskbar entry, default undefined. I've moved away from that, and now I just say, give me the process, and then here I deconstruct it again. So process could be undefined, and here I'll make sure to safely go or undefined so that when I do a destruct here, it's okay. But now I have the freedom for all of these to be completely undefined, and this one also by default, which is pretty much better because then here I can check it properly. So you see here in use effect, before I was just saying, if the ID or the URL changes, then set foreground ID. And that was happening when the ID would become undefined because the process no longer existed and it was defaulting to this empty object, basically. So now I actually just check, like, is the process still there? And is the process not closing? Okay, then set the foreground ID. So those are the two key things I wanted to check. I guess I could get closing here, perhaps. And then I could check it here. Oh, but then that's like two things I have to do in this. Huh, maybe that's okay. I like the clarity of writing it this way a little bit. So that's the other way to write that. So if there's a process and it's not closing, and now I've had to add that to the array, but that's okay, because then I get it out here from the destruct. So it'd be completely undefined, which would also be not closing. But then this would have to be true if it were undefined. I think that works. Let's check it out. So now let's see here. Let's refresh the page. Open a window. Open another window. So let's see. If I close this, it should focus here and not flicker away. Close. There we go. And that should just be consistent. That if I click this, it goes to that. I click this, it goes to that. I click this, it goes nowhere. And it didn't crash, which is nice. So that's been fixed. Fixed focus flicker. Fixed focus flicker on. Can I add any more Fs there? Is there like an F word for closing? I don't know if there is one. Too late anyways. So yeah, let me just quickly double check. Yep, that's what the change is. I like to double check these commits too because that's just sensible, I feel. Sometimes you let something slip in. I don't like to do that. Especially with the way I'm doing these commits too. I'm not making a PR at the end, a pull request. If I were, I could be a little more sloppy with the commits, and then in the end I do a couple other commits to clean up the branch for pull request review. But in this case, I like to be a bit more accurate with it because I'm showing you guys in front of the camera, and I'm not really going to go double check these later or tweak them. I might in another stream clean up mistakes I made, but they're not going to be mistakes that made the code not function because those we're going to catch because we're constantly using the code here. Okay, so we just did that. Don't need these underscore vars. Which ones are those? Ah, yes. There was just 2 cases here where I was doing this and I actually didn't need to, and I don't know why I thought I did. So I use underscore to say that it's not needed. So I didn't need ID here, but I thought for some reason I thought I needed to define it, but I actually don't. I can just have it be completely blank here. And that's what I'm going to do in those 2 cases because that just looks more cool. Looks more advanced. So don't need ID in these cases. In some cases. Or don't need underscore args. And just in general, don't need underscore arguments. Yeah, the arguments, no. For some things you do need it. If you want to destruct a variable, there's still some scenarios I think where I need it. Let me just see. I think I have one here. Yeah, this one here, you see. I wanted to take this process ID to get this process out, but I don't need it anymore. I just want the ... remaining, basically. But you have to somehow specify that you need this variable that you don't actually need. You just need to get it out. But they have a syntax for that, so I've already applied that anyways. Okay. Add that. What next? What's next on the docket? I don't know how much of an episode I'll have here. I guess we'll see if I can make it 2 hours. I think I still have a lot of changes. I haven't done any main features yet. I'm pretty sure there's a couple features in this episode. Use component window and add peak window. What the heck does that mean? This is for WebAmp, it looks like. Oh, this looks like a bigger change. WebAmp. This is all WebAmp? This part's not. What have I done here, guys? And girls? Oh, right. So there's a few scenarios where I was passing a window ref, but now I have this concept where I actually link, when the window's opened, I link it to the process. So I know what the window is, so I don't have to pass it anymore. So I think that's mostly what I've done. Let's do that. I think this changes something else. Let's do the WebAmp part of it last. Let's just focus on the main pieces here. So here's one piece, I think. R&D window. Why was I using it here? Oh, cool. So in use focusable and in both those hooks, basically, I was doing it and I don't need to anymore. So you see here in the use focusable hook, I've been passing in this. Do I need this ref? I don't know. This is WebAmp again. Let's do that one next. Here, this one here. So we don't need this and we don't need this anymore. So internally within these hooks, we're just going to get this window ref because we already have code that's setting this. Where is that code? I think it's within the component here. Let's double check. Yeah, see here in the component when it's first loaded, we link up the element where we say the component window is going to be that container. So we don't need to pass it here. We can just use it there. And that allows us to remove a bit of code here. But now we have to clean up these 2 hooks. So we don't need the window ref anymore. Let's actually just double check what I changed here. So I just did that. That part makes sense. Let's just, for use focusable, let's just copy again, because I feel like in the commits where I did them throughout the week, I took, let's say 2-3 hours per commit to be like thinking it through and stuff. we don't have that kind of time here to do it this episode. So it's better I just show you the changes so we can think it through faster. So you see here, I got rid of the ref hook. Like I said, this callback events is optional. Here we got to be careful because I've improved this now by doing the closing here, but because I did just a straight up copy paste, I messed myself up here, I think. What have I done? Okay, so I'm not happy with my change here. That's the problem when I've improved on my commits, but I'm copying a file from a branch where I didn't improve on my commits. This is actually a really minor one, so let's just clean it up properly. I'm just going to go through the changes. So for use focusable, we got rid of the ref, and then they're going to jump out at us, the issues here. So within the process here, where we're now getting closing, we can also get component window, and we can use it in place of these window refs. Here and here. And then we don't need window ref there, and we do need component window here. There we go, that was it, yeah. So that's a bit cleaner. So we don't have, we no longer have to pass that, and we just get it from the process, which feels cleaner to me anyways. And we're gonna do the same for the other hook as soon as I figure out where the heck it is. It's called use window transitions. It's for the animations. And we were using the window ref to do some calculations. And now we can make it simpler. That's a lot simpler there. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit on the code here, guys. I don't know if I was zoomed in enough. Actually, I'm pretty zoomed in. Let me see how many. Yeah, I'm already pretty zoomed in. Hopefully it's enough for you guys. If not, feel free to tell me. So here's another piece where I'm just going to switch these to be component window. We have to extract component window from the process here. I think I've done the same thing where I've switched to using process. The same thing I did in the other one. Yeah, I've switched. So this piece here, I'm just going to call process. And then I'm going to do the extracting here. This way process can stay undefined, and then we know when it should have been undefined. Because I prefer that, other than a default empty object. That's a little harder to figure out. So we don't need window ref here, but now we need this. Same here, we're going to replace that. And we don't need window ref, and we need that. There we go. So now in all cases, we're referencing that component window, which we have attached to the process. I much prefer that, so I was happy when I realized that. And I also prefer this method here with process, where we just take it here, because this can be undefined, and I want to know if it's undefined. So I like doing this where, oh wait, can I remove that now? Yeah, I want to get rid of these defaults too now. No more of those. That's much cleaner there too. Yeah, the reason you can't do that, if I try to do that here, where I'm like, component window, is it okay with that? I think it's okay with this. No, is it no? Let me comment this out for a sec. Yeah, see, it's okay with this, but then if you don't have the default like that, so now I have a default, and now it complains this initializer provides no value. So that's where you have to go like undefined, and then it works as expected, but then it's just like too much defaults. So if you get rid of this and you get rid of that, it works, but then if this is undefined, it complains with you trying to remove that, and then you get a crash there. So the best way to fix it, I found, is to just say, okay, give me the whole process here, and then I'm going to work with it in another declaration. And then I can say, if this is undefined, then you default that way. But then it doesn't complain here about the initializer thing, which I like, because it's either a process and these exist, or it's an empty object and then these don't need to be specific types. It's much preferable that way for me. So what else did we do in this one? We've fixed those two pieces. Oh, right. So the WebAmp one is where it gets tricky, because if we want to assume that the component window is the R&D window equivalent, then in apps that are windowless, like WebAmp, we can no longer use component window as our method of showing the peak thing. Because before I was doing the peak was always just whatever component window was. And then in WebAmp's case, it only is the main piece. So if we open up this here, it was just this little piece here, the top piece. So if I hover over this now, yeah, you see here, I was just showing the top. I like that. But that means that if I click here, I think it starts to cause bugs because it's like, it only treats this top piece properly for focusing. Yeah, you see here, watch, I click here, it didn't focus there. But if I click here, focus works because the use focusable hook is treating this main window as the web amp. That was a long explanation. So the fix is two-part. So there's this part here where I need to fix how peak works. I need peak to be able to look for a peak component. And there's going to be the option to have this custom peaking component if you want. So let's see what I changed here. So use window peak. I did the same exact thing once again, it looks like, where I'm not going to use this default anymore. I'm going to make a process extraction. And now I have this peak element. That's the new element. So here I say the preview element is either the peak element if the process has set it, or it's just the component window, which is the current way it acts. And then I also check that the preview element exists, whereas here I'm just assuming there's always a component window. But do we need to? What's the point of preview element? Pointless. Maybe I should just do this and just paste it in here. I think it complains. But why would it complain? Huh. Yeah, let's remove this. Let's see what it complains about here. I thought it was complaining about something earlier. I guess not, because this... Oh, wait a minute here. I need to define peak element. I feel like if I define peak element, we're going to see it complain, and we're going to understand what my issue was. But currently, I don't understand my issue. So let's just get to the updating the process type here, which is here. So in the process elements, we're also going to allow a peak element to exist. It's also going to be another HTML element. It's also optional. I think that's why this has an issue. Right. Well, maybe component window no longer needs to be optional. We should say there always needs to be a component window. So that'll probably fix it. There we go. Yeah, I think before I was having... Oh, wait, I'm still having an issue here. Okay, there we go. It's fixed. Yeah. I think if I put both of them as optional, then the 2PNG is like, hey, what if this and this don't exist? Because I need an HTML element. But now I'm saying this might exist, this will exist. Because this is now relevant. This is now necessary for other things. So hopefully that didn't cause any bugs by saying that's required. I don't think so. But I didn't have that before. So that's an improvement to say that this is now not optional. Whereas before I was allowing that to be optional. So the next piece of the puzzle is on the WebAmp side. So now we need to set this peak element for WebAmp. And then we're almost done with this move to using component window in all cases when it makes sense. So for WebAmp, there's two pieces. Here we need to fix it. We see it's already angry here. So the use window transition, we've got rid of needing container. Now it's going to use the component window, but currently the container ref does not point to what we expect it to point to, I think. Or is that true? No, I don't think that matters. Same here, so we get rid of container ref. So we just cleaned up those two hooks, basically. That's all that we do on this page. So those two hooks no longer need to know about container ref, but we need container ref still because we're actually using it here to unload WebAmp for further steps. And we're also using it here. Yeah, just unload WebAmp, because if we go to load WebAmp next, yeah, this I think needs it. It needs it to do the appending here. So we still need to know where that is. But basically we're just updating these two hooks with that file. This change, I still question whether that change is part of this step or not. I think that's here. This is part of something here I changed. Okay, let's go into this WebAmp here now and just see what I changed. last but not least is this file, which is the use webamp file. Might not be the last file I changed. Let's check the changes I did here. So this main window piece, I don't want to do this yet. I feel like that's premature. That's a different commit. This is, again, the same change that I've been doing to all of them. No more of this default here. From now on, give me a process, and then I'll default it here, and I'll just get a generic component window. And that also made it easier here. Before, I had to check the length. That was silly. That was a waste of time. And also, I'm not usually calling it window process anymore. I just call it process. Yeah, before I was all over the place with how I was doing this. Oh no, actually, sorry. This was already like this. But I didn't have a default. Now I have a default. I've kind of gotten rid of the default stuff in general. This is the change that I don't want to do right now. I don't think I need to. Let's just keep this like this. I think this was another unicorn suggestion. Was this piece here, because they want me to use query selector when possible. I think actually here it makes sense to use query selector, but we'll do that next. Unless it's complaining here. I renamed it to call it main window. What's it complaining about here? Element is not assignable to parameter HTML element. Oh, okay, that's why I changed this. Okay, maybe it does make sense. So the issue here is when you do get element, I think I can't specify here HTML element. Can I? Yeah, see, that doesn't work. So for get elements by class name, you can't do this TypeScript way of saying the element is this. But I think I can do as HTML element. No, I can't. Yeah, see, the issue is that this returns an array here. So I have to do this destructing of the array versus the other way that I just found out that I was using was this. So if we just keep this the same, what was it? It has to be a hash now, main window, the ID. So I've switched to using a query selector, but the good thing about the query selector is it can just come back with just one element. So now I can say that one element that's going to come back is going to be an HTML div element because I know it is. And now it doesn't complain here when I do link element because an HTML div element is a type of HTML element. So I think that's what I did there, but I'm not going to do the constant part yet. That'll do as a next little step. So yeah, so all I did really here, this remained the same, but because I've fixed the way default is, I'm checking it like that. So instead of just doing component window and doing main as HTML element here, I've cleaned up the way to do it there. And the component window is now the container element, and main window is the peak element. So that's the key difference. Oh, interesting. So I do it here too. Again, I'm still gonna not do the constant right now. Why did I change it here? I think I changed it down here just to be consistent because I changed it here so it would be copacetic with the type. And I've changed it here just to be consistent because before that's how they both were. It was get element by class name, get element by class name. And then I was using main. But main actually has an ID. So I'm just gonna say get me the main window ID. Yeah, I'm more happy with that. And then what have I done here? So before I was doing main, so we don't know if main's going to be an element. Here I was saying for sure it is, I guess, because this is not optional, but it should have been. There's a chance main window might not come back, so this should be optional chained, along with the ability to say or empty. And in that case, I had to define these if we're going to put them in there. So I had to do a minor change here that feels a little unnecessary to the linking of the component piece, the peak element thing, but there's some logic about why I changed it. That's all I changed though, actually, so it was minor enough. So this, don't worry about that just yet. But yeah, that was all that change was. And that's it. So now if we do a test here, let me jump back to the browser again. So now if I open WebAmp again and I do peak, there we go. It's still the main element. And if I open this one and peek, it's the whole window. And if I click here on the playlist, it focuses properly because the playlist is part of the component window. Cool. So if we actually look at what I did, oops, I even closed my show notes there. If we look at what I did here, I think I simplified it for the most part. Yeah, no longer need to pass in the container refs here. Mostly just removing stuff. Simpler checking here. Here I have to link 2 elements versus 1, but that's okay. So now that also gives me the ability for the peak element to be different, which is kind of cool. So maybe let's say if I'm doing a video player later, the peak element might just be the video itself. Or I might even do that for, it could even be cool for like JS-DOS or something, and just have the peak element be the canvas itself. I might do that in the future. That's a nice idea. But it's for another day. So you see here, while I was doing the use window peak, this mistake slipped back in. Sloppy. It's a good thing I'm checking these. I gotta make sure I didn't do that anywhere else. Yeah, everywhere else is still good. Everywhere else is still clean. I switched this around a little bit. Before I was checking process at the end. Here I'm checking process first. If there's no process, don't worry about linking elements. Don't even think about anything else. That's the logic I prefer. Heck, let's just make this a constant at the same time. So main window is, now it's an ID, so it's being specifically used in 2 places. Now I have a file called functions here, but I've put a few constants here, so again, I'm being inconsistent. I'm sorry. Export const, I don't remember what this is. Yes. We'll call it the main window, as the name will call the variable. And we'll put it here, I guess. So that's the ID of the main window. And we're going to use that in place here. And where was the other place that I changed it? Here. There we go. And I have to import that. Like so. There we go. So that, I prefer using constant when we're using an ID in 2 places anyways. So that's a bit nicer. But yeah, I wanted to undo a change I did. Not here. Here's good. Here. In window peak, I changed these timers back. That was a mistake. They could remain how they were, which was better. There we go. So yeah, I just extracted out that process piece and added the peak element as an option here, and that worked. And then here, what have I done? Right, I removed the need for the ref completely, which is always nice, so I don't even need to use ref there. Loud motorcycle going by. Use component window here. That was the main idea of the change. I guess I had to do 2 changes, kind of switching to the peak and using component window when possible. So that's what I'm going to make the note about here. So rely on component window and optional peak window. Or let's say use component window and optional peak window. I think that basically captures what I've done here. As yeah, I've switched to having this way to do a peak element. Oh yeah, it's called peak element. And component window. I guess that makes more sense because the component window is the whole window, whereas the peak element is just what element do you want to show when they hover over the taskbar and you want to peek the item. So I like that I called that peak element versus component window. I'm happy with that. And that's consistent here. Taskbar entry. That could be called taskbar element, but let's not get too picky here. Actually, it is the whole entry, so that's fair, in the same way that this is the whole window. Anyways, let's commit it. No more overthinking it. I also see a chat message here, which I'll get to as soon as I paste this here. Let me just clean up my thoughts here before I look at this message. So back to the browser for a second here, refresh this. So we did that. We did everything here, which was the component window thing. So we're here. So we're going to go do this one next, but let me read this message here. So we got a message here from York Van Klinken. That's an interesting name. Could you check the peak element of your file explorer when you switch it to full screen? Doesn't seem to work for me locally. Love your stream, by the way. Oh, thank you. So let me double check this. Could you check the peak element of your file explorer when you switch it to full screen? Let me just try to understand that. So I'm in this app here. I open File Explorer and I hover over peak. That's working. Do you mean when I maximize, perhaps? Oh yeah, interesting. Do we want to peak on maximize? Probably. Does Windows? Let me just test my Windows really quick. Let me maximize something and hover over it. Yeah, it does. It looks weird. Looks a little big. Maybe that's the issue that I've got going on. Let me hover over this again. Yeah. Something's wrong there anyways. Let's try with winamp. The winamp, well, I can't maximize winamp, so that's pointless. Let me open another one here and just try one more thing here. Yeah. Assuming, yeah. I don't know if you meant that, or if you, when you said full screen, I'm guessing you meant maximize. And if so, you're absolutely correct. You just found a bug. Well, I'm not going to solve that today, but I'm going to add it to my notes here. That's then maybe my next stream, I'll solve that. Thank you for finding a bug. Very appreciated. So peak window doesn't, peak window image is broken on maximized windows. True dat. Let's try the DOS one really quick to see if that's the same. That I can maximize. I can maximize Doom here. It's definitely showing something, because that one's black versus the other one being kind of gray. Oh, yeah, there we go. Yeah, something's wrong with the aspect ratio and the sizing. I've definitely got something messed up there. But luckily, there is something going on there. There's another issue here with the Doom canvas only shows intermittently in this peak. There's quite a few little issues with peak, but you just found another one, so much appreciated. Yeah, I meant maximize. Cool. The Yorick just responded. Yeah, so it was maximized. So yes, definitely you found a bug. Much appreciated. So I'm going to note it as peak window image is broken on maximized windows. Totally true. And usually after I finish this stream, I'll take these notes and then throughout the week, I kind of think about them and carry them over, put some of them as notes on the board. So I'll definitely get back to that one. Thank you for that. And these ones as well. Cool. So I'm not going to figure out that bug today, but I think it looked to be, there was an image there. So it's still taking a picture, but I think the way that I had the stretching is wrong. So something's messed up anyways, clearly. Check length, don't infer. I think I already was doing that for a few, so maybe I already caught this one. I think I already caught this one in my last commit that I did when I was a bit more careful. Yeah, looks like last week I didn't catch that one. Nice, don't even need to do that one. Simpler R&D window. Didn't I just simplify it already? Okay, cool. I think this might even be partially what I already did, but I think this is just more of the same of what I was just discussing, which was stopping relying on these defaulted processes and having it just say, give me the process so I know if it's undefined. Because here I was like checking the length to see is it this empty object versus now it's just undefined. So it becomes a lot cleaner to check here. And I also don't need to do as process here. And I didn't like the name window process, so I've just switched it to be called process. So let's change that then. So this is the R&D window. And let me just, yeah, I haven't caught that one yet, but that was another one I wanted to convert just like the other ones. So let's make sure we got it right and didn't slip in any junk. So yeah, we switched to using that. Why is it complaining here? Window container. Is this something else? Looks like I have a bug here that's, oh no, this is related to this change. I've messed something up here. Now I've confused myself. I see here that I did indeed remove the as.html element. But why did I feel I had the confidence to do that? Let me just check here. So this should be an HTML element. That's true. Window container. Interesting. I didn't change that. But for some reason I wasn't getting this bug before. Argument of type element is not assignable to parameter of HTML element. So this is here. It's coming from that then. So the children are an HTML collection. Okay, that's fair. It's interesting that I didn't catch this last time. I wonder why. Let me undo this change and see if it worked before I mess this up. Okay, so I was just doing as HTML element. Is there like a second piece to this change? Let's go back to the browser here. Did I change 2 files? No, I only changed 1 file. So why did I think reroute focus would have been okay with this window container? Was I just blindly getting rid of as HTML elements for no reason? Seems like that's what was going on, really. I'm gonna not do that, I think. I don't know why the heck I was. Yeah, let's not. I can't justify that change. Let's take a peek here. Reroute focus. 1 second. I'm saying I want an HTML element. That's true. I don't want just a generic element. Okay, let's bring that back for now until we figure out why the heck I removed it. So I had as HTML element in the other two. Let's go back to comparing the commit here. This we know about. And now process can be compared versus before where I was checking the length of a keyed object. That's pointless. This is way cleaner. And yeah, that's it. That's a simpler change. I don't know why I removed the as element here. We're not ready to do that yet, honestly. In what scenario could I? I don't even know. Maybe I can define it here as like HTML elements, but why would I even have to? Because it says here it's an HTML collection, so why would the thing I get back just be an element? I guess that's how they roll, man. I don't know. Whatever. Interesting. Yeah, it's weird when you see a commit and you're like, why did I change this and it worked and now it doesn't work? But live and learn. So do I want to call it simpler R&D window? I feel like that doesn't capture the issue completely. It's more about this changing to, let's say, use undefined process instead of checking object length for R&D window. Okay, that's lengthy. Use undefined process to check, or let's just say check if process is, oh my gosh, is undefined for R&D window. Yeah, I mean, I guess that kind of touches on this whole checking process undefined versus object length of a process. Not super happy with that commit message, but the commit itself is valid. Moving on, we just did this. Separate what? Separate R&D window elements. Oh, okay. So if you guys remember that I did part of that change and it wasn't working, it looks like this follow-up commit fixed it. So it's probably good I didn't do it. So whatever I just did here will be relevant to the other one. Let's go back then and do it now. What was it here? It was right here. Yes. So this piece here, I'm getting rid of these as HTML element. And then what I did is I just say that this is the R&D window elements from here. And then I do another extract where I say here is like this. Oops. There. So before I was taking them just directly from here, but then I didn't have the opportunity to say what kind of array it is. I wonder if I could just do it here like that. Could I have just done that? That gets a bit lengthy anyways. No, that doesn't really work. I think this is probably clean enough. Oh, what happened there? That's not so bad. So this is this is its own element now, which is an array. And then I say here that I expect these things to be HTML elements. It's an array of HTML elements, not an HTML collection. Oh, okay. So I'm almost redefining it. How could I have done it here, I wonder? Maybe if I wrap this entire thing like that as HTML element. Oops. Yeah, I guess that works. Not a fan of it though. Yeah, that looks sloppy and the formatting's messed up. So let's just stick to what I did here, which was this. Put them on two separate definitions, just so that I can be clear what I'm to do the type right here. There we go. Now that change makes sense. Pretty minor anyways, but I do prefer that most of the time. I feel like when I'm doing these as is, I should just go up a level. But I'm still doing an as. At least I'm doing only one of them now. Define HTML element array. Or let's just say types higher up. I'm not happy with that commit message either, but I could spend all day just making commit messages. Dones. That was this. Cascade windows. Here we go. Now we're talking about a feature. This is a cool one. And I think I actually got it pretty simple. So the idea is, like when you open a window here, let me clear the position memory and reset here. So this will start centered. So you open a window, and then when you open another File Explorer window, it opens right over top of it. Now I want it to open like that. And then when I open the next one, I want it to open like that and not have them all open in the center. And I want this to be on a per app basis. So this is something I noticed with Windows. Actually, I noticed with Windows when it comes to cascading, it only seemed to really happen, at least on Windows 10, on my Windows, it's only happening for the File Explorer. But I actually used to think it happened on every app. Like if you opened up a calc and then you opened up another calc, that they would cascade. I've noticed that it doesn't do that for me, but that's how we're going to have my app work, is if you open up the same app, it cascades to its other self. Wait a minute here. I'm questioning this line height change now. It doesn't look right. Let me go back to that 1.2 line height that I changed earlier and just try 15 pixels again and see if it actually visibly changes. Let's see here. So this icon right here, let's keep an eye on that and see if the text changes when I save this here. Not really, honestly. Maybe I'm just being paranoid. I feel like, I don't know though. Let me take a print screen here. This is where sometimes I go into MS Paint and kind of really dig into it, but that's a bit hardcore. Yeah, I feel like it's different though. I hope it's not. If it is, then I've messed up. I've failed. So without sharing the thing here, I'm just going to quickly plop it into MS Paint and just do a little eyeball comparison. And actually it looks perfectly fine. So I guess it's just in my head. Let's leave it there, right? Leave it in my head. Let's make a note though, because that kind of stuff bugs me. So let's leave this not changed and say that the line height thing is still fixed, but let's just double check. Did line height 1.2 fix things or break them? Question mark. I'll follow up with that. And if I don't mention it next episode, then everything's fine, is usually how it goes. So cascade windows, that's a cool feature. I wanted that a lot last time and I never did it because I just couldn't think about how to do it properly. This is another thing where component window came in handy, and having that when the process opens, it notes where its DOM element is. That became useful actually. So where did I put the logic? It's a little big. So the cascade offset, that one's simple enough. That's basically just how much to the down and how much to the right from the previous window. And I've decided from looking at windows that it's basically 26. At least for me it is. Maybe internally they use 25 and it just makes sense for them somehow that it works. For me, I need 26 to emulate with their 25 if that's the case. So let's just say it's 26. And I'm using a number in this case, just like I used for this offset here. Because we're going to do a bit of math. We're going to take the position of the previous window and do some math with it. So this is two pieces. There's the cascade position function that I've created. And then there's the changing of the use draggable to accept it. Let's do the use draggable change first, because that one doesn't require I explain to you how cascade function works yet. I can leave you guys on the edge of your seat trying to figure out how it works. So let's just make sure we didn't let any mistakes slip in here too with our copy paste, and make sure we keeping things consistent. So what have I changed here? I've added use process. I need the processes to know where the component window is, I guess. I need the cascade offset. Okay, that's totally fair. I need to know that 26 position. Oh man, default window position? Oh, okay. This is when I still thought I needed default window position. Little did I know, I don't need that. So we never needed it here. Making the changes even more minor. So cascade position, I don't have that function yet. So nice. What have I done here? I've changed this. I've changed again. So if you remember here, I switched it so that center position was coming off of the Windows state here. I've changed it to just get Windows state and do kind of the same thing where I break it apart. Now, why have I done that? I think I've done that just so that this doesn't look all messy here, maybe. Because here I was just passing position here. So all the work was being done here. Now I was doing all the work down here. Let's take a peek and just see what it looks like. Let's take, so we already had center position. We have that right here. That hasn't changed. All that changes is just adding cascade, basically. So let's just do that and let's see what that looks like. But that means undoing this. So yeah, let's undo a bunch of this because it's just so much changes that seem a little unnecessary. We'll copy this back, this piece here, and then just paste it here over top of this. There we go. Wait, did I lose? What? Why did I need stack order? Okay, I probably need stack order for the cascade one. Let me just copy how that function works. And then it would go right here, or. Let's see how that looks on the formatting. Oh yeah, that looks weird. You see here, even my coding coloring, it like made that whole function purple. Okay, so that's why I changed the code, I think, just because it was getting out of hand. Okay, so I've changed it to be like this. Fine. So instead of going position equals and then having a default here, if this is undefined, I now just take out the window state, get position here. Even here I could do it, like right there maybe. Do I want to do it there? If that's the case, what? Yeah. Do I want to do it there? Good question. What's the point of window state here? Can this be simplified? Can this just be like how it was before? How was this before? This was like this. Maybe that still works, but it just needs to be... Oh, because then it's going to complain. If I go position here, and then I goes equal, it complains about that initialize thing. Yeah, initializer provides no value. Okay. So that's why I did it the way I did it. So let's not question it then. So I extract window state, and then I try to get position here, but it can be undefined in this case. So if it's undefined, try to cascade the position. And if no windows exist, so it's only going to cascade if it doesn't already have a position and another window is open that is like one of its parent windows, like another file explorer is open, okay, I'll cascade off of that file explorer. But if that doesn't happen either, then just go back to centering. So the change here is pretty minor. I basically just imported cascade, get that cascade offset. Why do I get cascade offset here? Couldn't I get that here in cascade position? No, I guess not, because cascade position is not a hook. So here I'm actually accessing the theme because I'm in a hook and I'm passing on that cascade position, just like here I'm passing on taskbar height. Okay, that's fine. So that's simple enough. Now let's try to figure out how cascade position works. So we've added it as an option. We've got the cascade size, so let's just copy it right here. And I think in the end it became quite simple, which I was happy about. So yeah, because this isn't a hook, I had to pass a few things. I need to know, give me, what are the processes? What's the order of the stack? And what's the offset of the cascade that you want? Where's the positioning offset? And then I'm putting that in the window functions, which are, where are they? Here they are. So the same place that center position is, I've added another function here called cascade position. So here's where center position was, and here's the new cascade position. And it required me getting the process delimiter. And let's just dive right into that file because it's not worth diffing. It's just a new function. So this is the function that does cascading. So we have the ID of the current process, the process that we are about to open. We have the processes that exist. We have the stack order as to which process has been, which file explorer was the last that was visible. And then position can be returned or nothing. And if nothing's returned, then we go to that center position default. So what's the first thing we do here? We take the ID and we split it based on the process delimiter. We've done this logic in another place as well, I think. No, maybe we haven't. Here we go. So for use title, we do the same thing, where you got this ID, and the ID can look like, let's say it'll look like file explorer process delimiter, which in this case is __, and then like the directory, let's say desktop. Or there wouldn't be a process for that. So let's say just this actually, just the root folder is like the same as this here is basically going to be that process ID. So by doing this, you're getting just this piece. So you're saying just file explorer is the PID. And then we also want to get just this piece here. So we want to see all the other entries that could be in the stack. So let's say there's another, let's say if I open up libs, now there's going to be this and there's going to be libs. So there's two processes. There's this one and there's this one. So if we got libs here, let's say libs is the one and we want to know, let's say we open this one. So now the variables are going to be, the ID is going to be like Vanta, like that. And the processes is going to have all of those and et cetera, et cetera. Or no, it's going to be lib/Vanta, like that. And then we're going to get this piece. So we're going to search for all of these in the stack, and then we're going to find the first one. So in this case, we look in the stack, find top to bottom, and we want to find the stack item that starts with that process thing we made, the file explorer underscore the delimiter. And that'll be considered the process PID that we want to go off of, I believe. Or no, sorry, not this. This is just the wording to be like, yeah, like that for the search parameter. We only need, we could have just put this right here, but then it's making it every time. It's a little less efficient. So I've just cached it as a variable. And then we just find the one that starts with it. And then once we found it, this parent position process, we look through the processes, and either we get parent position process or it's going to be just nothing, and it's going to return undefined here. So the parent process, okay, parent position process. It's a little bit weird, the wording here that I've got. There must be a better way to do this. I mean, this can be a refactor for another day, but I'm not happy with this. Maybe I could search in processes, but this is an object, so it's a little wonky the way I've done it here. But the long story short of this is to try to get, let's say if you're libvanta's case, you want to get this process. So I want to open up, so I wanted it when it opened to find this window and then open up at an offset of 26 by 26 of it. So this parent process would be the libs one if we opened up Vanta. But yeah, I'm not super happy with this here. This is to get the right process. But we know the process. What? Don't we know the process? Oh wait, no, we don't. Okay. Yeah, so the idea of parent processes is to get the component window in the end. Maybe in that case, I could do this. Component window. And I could do or. Does that clean it up a little bit? And then it's like this. That's a little cleaner. Hopefully it works. Yeah, so it's a little cleaner. Stack PID. Yeah, because we already have PID here once. Stack PID. Geez, I had to do a lot of breaking apart of this to get what I wanted. But long story short, we get the libs process. We get its component window, which is the reference to its DOM element. We do this function called getBoundingClientRect, which gets us its position, its X and its Y. And then once we have that position, so we have the parent's position, we do a check here. So if they're both zeros, then we essentially don't have anything, and we're just going to not give a position. But if the X or the Y is set, then okay, we know there's some position for the parent, and then we're going to do that math here where we're going to just be offset it. So whatever the X and Y are, we just go a little bit offset. And that's it. That's the whole concept of this function. Don't need this here. So before we test it, I see we have another message here. So I'm just going to read that message before we test this. Got a message here from Tommy Hetrick. Hello, just found one of your videos and saw you were live. Anyway, bye. Gonna start from the first stream. Oh, cool. Well, I'm happy to hear people are randomly finding my videos, and I'm happy to hear you're interested enough to start at the first stream. This is the 27th stream, and a lot of them are 2 to 3 hours, so I'll be okay if you jump ahead a bit, but it might be nice to start at the first stream and maybe jump a couple just to kind of see where things are going. But anyway, thank you. I'm happy to hear you're here. Feel free to throw some likes and a subscribe my way. Always happy. So let's try out this cascade function now. I think we have everything we need to try it. Let's go into the browser and refresh here. Let's clear our cache of all of our positions by doing clear site data. And we refresh again. So we open up this window, and now the next one I open should cascade off of it. There we go. And if we open this one, cool, it cascades too, because it's opening in File Explorer. And then if we were to open up, let's say, Calibri, we'll open v86. So that should open centered because it's a different process. Yeah, and it did. You see it opened in the same position that this one opened. That was centered, but then it resized, so it got bigger. Whoa, and it got even bigger yet. Jeez. Oh man, it hates this resize. There we go, it handled it. So now we have v86 open, right? So if I open another v86, it should open cascaded to it. And same with File Explorer. So if I open up another File Explorer, it should still open cascaded. Yeah, it did. It opened cascaded to this. But if I open Linux, it should open cascaded to this. There we go, it did. There's an issue with running two v86s. It causes a console log error, but the cascading worked, as you see. So that's cool. And both of those instances did run, but I don't know what that console error is. Don't care for now. I might turn v86 into a singleton and only allow one instance because it really chugs. I have a fast computer with like a lot of processor cores and I can't handle that. So I think it's not really using multi-core properly anyways, so it doesn't matter how many cores I have. So that's the change. We got Cascade now. So I've discussed this Cascade position. I cleaned this up a little bit. I'm still not completely happy with this. This seems like an unnecessary intermediary step. But if I put this here, it's really cramming that together. Let's see how Prettier formats it. Sometimes Prettier does such a good job formatting things that I like doing it that way. Let's put this here and see what happens. That looks a little convoluted and confusing, unfortunately. Yeah, not a fan of that. Let's just leave this like that then. Oops, like that. Maybe we can say here, or to keep the defaulting there. Oh, that's nice. And then we can get rid of this. There we go. I like this on one line. So the parent position process, you're going to find it or it's nothing. And then here when you try to extract the component window, if it's nothing here, this will become undefined, which will go to an empty object, which will mean this is undefined, which will mean this is undefined, which means this will be an empty object, which means these will be zeros, which means this will fail, which means this will be undefined. All right. So in theory, that makes sense. So we've cleaned that up. This is the cascade offset, which we decided is 26. I might fix that later. Done. Oops, what happened here? Shrink some stuff here. So let's just go back to the browser and what did I call this? Cascade windows. Yeah, I like that. And in some ways it's better cascade logic than Windows itself has, because I'm not happy with their logic after. As I tried to analyze it to try to copy it, I was like, why does it work this way? This is weird. So, and it's possible I might have just analyzed it incorrectly. But anyways, Cascade done. Hopefully I've been keeping up these show notes. I'm not sure if I've forgotten to save one of these between commits, but the commit logs are the real source of truth. So we're done with Cascade. What's next? Oh man, we actually have a lot of commits left. We're at 2 hours already. Before I was like, oh, this is going to take or we're not going to have enough. And now it's like too much because I've explained so much. So JS-DOS has a flicker. This is another little bug. Looks like a really easy fix. Looks bulky, but so if we open up, let me clear this out here and I'll show you the bug. So if we open up JS-DOS Doom, you'll see that it goes like small, big, and then small, big really quick. Watch. So small, big. You see, that's wrong. Not a fan of that. So we're going to clear the data again because it only happens on initial load, which is most people that visits the site load. So it's another one of those issues with this. Wait, is it an issue with closing or what is it? Yeah, it is an issue with closing, actually. I think it's partially is and partially isn't, I suppose. So I think, let's find it here. It's right here in the code, I think. Oh, yes. Oh, okay, so this isn't just a JS-DOS issue, actually. This is an in general issue that I have with auto resize windows, is that auto resizing was like triggering a rebuild of the R&D window, and I have an on destroy event here that saves the position, and it was like saving it incorrectly. Auto resize was resizing it, then it was saving the auto resize, but I'm trying to remember why it was doing this. I don't remember the reasoning, but basically an easy fix is I only want this to save the window state when I know it's closing. How do I know when it's actually closing? Well, luckily, I have this closing variable. Oh, wait. This is a bad idea now, I realize. I do have the ability to just straight up close something without this transitionary step. That could be a concern. Yeah, because I've added this solution. This fixes it, by the way. But I think with this, oops, well, it won't fix it the way I've written it here. If closing, so check if it's closing before you do the destruction. And if it's closing, then save it. And we get closing as part of the dependencies, and we get closing from here. So that's the change. And if we look here, you'll see that it probably fixed things. Watch, we open Doom, small, big, and then it stays big. That's what I wanted, yeah. So it does fix it, but a concern I have is that it is possible to just straight up close a window. And even when I just straight up close it, I did want to save position. But now that's no longer an option. It's only going to save position if I do this transitionary closing step. Maybe I'll just make a note to deal with that later. I think right now, everywhere where I'm closing it, I do it this way, where I would know. But I have to now be explicit, I guess. Make sure closing equals true. Wait a minute. Oh, I see Tommy here has retracted his message. Too late, Tommy. Anyways, I already read it out loud, so... that's funny. But yeah, no problem. Maybe he's retracting it because he's like, hey, I just popped in, I'm getting out of here. But don't worry. And I wanted to make a note here about that closing thing. So what do I need here? When doing instant close, still set closing true. I think what I'll do in that case is instead of doing the 250 millisecond close, I'll just be a 0 millisecond one when I want to do instant close. But yeah, I think I have a command called close here. Yeah, it's here with this true piece. Yeah, I need the ability to do instant closing still at the end. Let's leave it because it actually works fine. I think it's just, let's not even worry about it, honestly. I think whenever I close a process, I want to do it this way. I always want to be able to have that animation. It's just unfortunate that I even need it. The reason for this closing step, by the way, is because of the framer motion animate transition thing, where when the component gets deleted from the DOM, I have it transition fade out. But if I delete the process, it starts to mess with the component in a way that really causes a lot of problems. So I've added this 250 millisecond delay where the component's still kind of partially there. That's what was needed to fix this here, to fix the JS DOS flicker. And I think let's just be happy with that fix for now. And we'll worry about the closing issue if it ever comes up. No more JS DOS flicker. Or let's just say, don't save window state until closing. Yeah, it's not even a JS DOS thing, but it fixes JS DOS. So we'll commit that, and then I see another message has come in that I'm going to read here. Gant123, how are you? I've been watching since the window maximize bug. Loving the content. Very neat side project. Thank you very much, sir. I don't remember when the maximize bug occurred. I have so many bugs, it's hard to keep track of, but I'm happy you're enjoying the content. I've got another 26 streams of similar content, I think, and hopefully another... who knows how many, at least another 30, I'd say, but who knows? I got my post-it notes there. That's the notes for this, for my my side project. Every one of those post-its is a problem I got to solve, including these ones here, which I'll have to add to the board. But for now, let's move on. I've got 19 commits. Let's push these commits to the redo branch in case there's a power outage that nukes my changes. We're done with this one. Let's move on. Make MP3 parsing more efficient. Let's do it. Gotta move my leg here. So what have I done here? How have I made this more efficient? Interesting. Let's take a peek at this one here. So this is the WebAmp functions. Let's take a peek at it. Functions, WebAmp, here it is. Paste in this here, and let's take a peek at what I changed to make it more efficient. So I've noticed, I think I read that there was a, oh, okay, interesting here. So this is just a change that doesn't need to occur. It looks like when I did the commit originally, I had it up there. Let's not focus on that. So the only real change is right here for this file. I've added a piece, I added another variable. Oh yeah, right. So let's take a peek at this here. So the music metadata browser package has the ability to pass in options, I noticed. Or are they here? Here they are, options. And I feel like a lot of times when you pass them in, it makes things better. It makes things faster. When, if you don't pass it in, it needs to calculate it. Usually in those cases, it's better to just pass it in if you already know it. And that was in the case of the MIME type. I don't need it to auto detect. I know it's an MP3. And the size, I already know the size because I already have the file object. So I'm hoping that passing those in makes it more efficient. And also I'm able to specify a few things I don't need here. So duration, the duration option is to say that if you can't calculate duration from the ID3 tag, scan the whole file. I want to do that because I care about doing duration here because I'm using it. Skip the cover. I don't need to know the cover image here. And I also don't need you to calculate the post headers. So that's another thing I made more efficient is I found that there's these two pieces. I don't need those. I only need the artist and title, and those aren't necessary here. So hopefully it saves a little time doing that. And I needed the MIME type, so let's just copy that. Where did I put that? In constants. Here it is. And where did I paste that? Doesn't matter even. Let's put it here. Here's where it was. So the MIME type for MP3s is this audio MPEG. So we'll just pass that all the time because we know it's an MP3. That's all we're dealing with here. And there was one other file that I changed, and that is the file entry functions. That's where I'm taking MP3s and I'm actually getting the cover art for them. I'll actually demonstrate that too. Let me just open up my music collection here very slowly because I have a slow hard drive. A slow external hard drive. I have a fast non-external. Oh, what happened to my icons here? Refresh. There we go. So if I drag that, so you see here we got an album art cover. That's directly extracting that from the MP3. And if we go to the code here, I think it's right there. And let's just see what I changed. Yeah, here it is here. So same thing. I take in that MP3 file type, MIME type. And so I'm passing in the MIME type, I'm passing in the size, just like the last one. And here I don't calculate duration, so I don't, and by default it's false anyway, so I don't have to say duration false. But I can skip post headers. I can't skip the cover this time because I need the cover. And I also found out that they have another function internal called select cover. Before I was just taking the first image from the array of pictures. But I think there's a little bit of logic that select cover does. So I'm just going to rely on their select cover logic to get the real cover image. And I'll do it that way. So now I say select cover from the picture instead of this. This is an array of images, iPicture array. And I'm just passing it to the select cover function, which is already part of the music metadata functions. And then before I was saying if it's a picture, but now I'm calling it the cover picture. And I'm passing it directly and extracting it from data. So if there's no error and there's a cover picture, then use that. Otherwise, use this. Cool. So if I save that and I drag another MP, oh, let's just look at the one I have here. Refresh this. There we go. So it still picks the cover art up. So I made it a little more efficient there by saying a few things can be skipped. Milliseconds have been saved. Make MP3 parsing more efficient. Yes, I should say ID3 parsing, really. MP3/ID3, which is the tag information. Yep. Didn't slip in any mistakes here. That still looks just as good as before. And same with this. We've done a lot of changes here, and I feel like we aren't done. That was this one here. So let's move on to some other ones. Improved WebAmp types, right. this is a big change. So the basics of the change were, this is where I was talking about where I wanted to use WebAmp's built-in types, just so I'm doing less type defining myself. So let's say yarn add WebAmp, yarn add a dev dependency of WebAmp. So I have no use for WebAmp's package because I make my own, but I do have a use for its type definitions. So now we have WebAmp here is in our dev dependencies, so it's not going to be part of the bundle. And what next? So we got it there. So a lot had to change, unfortunately. I mean, not unfortunately, fortunately, but from a describing it to you guys point of view. Let's take a peek. I've actually made it way more simple. So if we look at the WebAmp types here, you see before I was defining track myself. I was defining all of these functions myself. Not needed. So let's paste this here. So I've cleaned this up a lot, actually. You see here it's a lot more simple now. And if we look at the changes, so I've changed this dispatch options to be a lot cleaner. Before I had all three of these together and I was like, it could be this, or it could be this. That's some sloppy typing that I was doing. Way better typing is this, because each one can only be a certain thing in a certain case. So it's like, instead of having this big generic dispatch optionals, I'll say, well, if the type is specifically the string close window, then I need a window ID that's a string. If it's this, I need a window that's a string. And if it's this, I need this part here. So that's much more clean. That's much more the way I wanted it. I guess these could still be optional. I only need one or the other, but let's just say we want to set both most of the time. And then I've cleaned this up here. So as before, I was just saying this WebAmp dispatch where it could be any of these types plus the type, which is just a generic string. Now I just define these three specifically and I say it's one of these three is the command. Way more clean. So the reason I still had to do this piece is that the WebAmp types did not have, if I look at the type definition, this is the type definition I had to work with. It doesn't actually have any of this store stuff or the dispatch stuff, unfortunately. So I still had to do those three pieces myself, but all the other things like the skin is loaded or render when ready, that stuff we already had. So that I was able to use here. So I was able to take WebAmp and basically just extend that WebAmp CI that I already had and just say it's part of WebAmp, but with the store. And here I was able to say type of WebAmp is what you get back from the constructor. So I didn't need this stuff either. So you see the type it's way more simple, but it's still just as clear because I'm able to use the built-in WebAmp stuff. So you see here it's mostly red. I mostly removed most of it. And the file that's left is just very focused on the dispatch piece. I would have loved if this part existed too, but hey, WebAmp author, feel free to use my types. So that was this piece here. And the reason these types are better, by the way, is like, let's say here, oops, where am I using it? Here I actually use it. So you see here where I'm using it, watch. So now if I don't have this, now it tells me right away, hey, you need a window ID. Does it say that? Yeah, missing window, sorry. So there's window there, very clear. Versus if I take away this one, it says, hey, you need positions. Nice. So before it wasn't doing that. That's much more using your types properly and getting the most out of them. So there's two other pieces of this little puzzle. This one's really easy to change. So for the WebAmp functions here, I just had track. I'm no longer defining track myself. Now I'm just getting track directly from WebAmp. But it's the same track, so it has even more information than my track had. This one's like, is it URL or is it blob? So, and does it have this, you know? More information is great. So my type is way more strong that way, basically. I mean, strong is not the right word for it. Explicit, verbose, I don't know what the right word is for it, but. And I'm just gonna copy paste this one too. It's just another simple one that we'll analyze here. It's for the use WebAmp hook. And let's see what I changed. So I'm not doing WebAmp options anymore. I'm taking it directly from the WebAmp type again. And I'm always doing import type. To be very explicit, I only need the types. And here I just switched it to options. Here, instead of saying it's a CI, by default, it's not. It's the WebAmp thing. But then I say cast it as a CI because it also has the store type to it. That's it. So I've improved the types by making way less code. And hey guys, hopefully I'm back. I don't know if you noticed, but I dropped off. My streaming software froze on me. It happens sometimes. I still haven't figured out why, but hopefully we're back in it. So thanks for staying with me. Sorry for the drop off. Let's fix it. I think I was just kind of finishing explaining to you guys that I just finished the WebAmp, improved WebAmp types. That's where we were. I got to fix my VS Code a little bit there, or sorry, my OBS streaming software. There, it's fixed again. So yeah, sorry guys, dropped off on you there, but I don't think you missed anything. I was just reviewing that I fixed everything. So I changed very little in the end to make the types better by being able to use them. And it's always preferred if you can use the types directly from the packages. So I'm trying to do that more and define less of my own types. But unfortunately, in WebAmp's case, it's not completely up to date. So I still had to do my own little piece for the store dispatch functionality. Cool. We're done with that one. Sorry again for the freeze. Let's move on. Switch to query selector for WebAmp. Right. I think this is just in general what I've been doing. Remember how in that other instance I switched from get class name to the get query selector? In general, I'm switching to get query selector because it lets me define the types in a cleaner way. So I'm just doing the same thing here, basically. Like so. There we go. And in this case, it's actually correct that this can be null. So I should have always been specifying that, which is another thing I found a little cleaner by doing it this way. Wait, why do I have container window here? Oh, okay. This is another little change I did that I didn't seem to mention for some silly reason. Yeah, this was WebAmp a second ago. Like that, WebAmp. But I've made a, let's go back to the browser for a second. So I switched this to container window, but where the heck's container window? Oh, okay, so it's right here in the same file. Oh, cool. So I'm basing it on ID, where, oh, I was basing it on ID before anyways. Well, I've made it a selector, so this one was here. Let's just put them side by side. So we'll call it container window. We'll put it there. Okay, there. So we switched to using query selector. I prefer it because it lets me do the type that way. But honestly, it's a minor change. What was the other improvement? There was another piece of it to the puzzle, I think. Not really. I think this was just Unicorn recommending I try to use query selector more often. And I think I partially agreed because I liked that it was consistent. Because then you see here, when I'm doing like these hard-coded constants, they're always selector queries. So rather than just being WebAmp and knowing, oh, you have to pass that into an ID selector, here I'm just saying it's the ID of WebAmp and it's more clear. When you see that hash, you're like, oh, it's an ID. Okay. So we did that little piece, but there was another piece that I changed. I think it was just another query selector. What did I change here? I'm not sure what I changed here. Yeah, I'm less clear with this. Let's copy this. I think sometimes the PR commit makes it hard to tell. But if I do it in VS Code with a diff, it'll be very clear that I only changed like one line maybe. That happens sometimes too, where you get confused by the diff and then you actually just check it out and it's like, oh, okay, this is a lot more sensible. So what did I change? Very little, actually. Yeah, it looked way more in the diff. Oh, I just protected it here. Okay. So, oh yeah, right. So by changing this here to be optionally null, when it gets query selector can return null, not undefined. And in that case, we need to check this now. We can't just assume that WebAmp element is always there. That's fair. Oh, so it's the same here. Yeah. So in both get WebAmp element cases, we either do optional chaining or we check it here. Yeah, because here we're using it twice. I could optional chain here, but I need to check here, so I'm just checking in general here. Okay, cool. So not as complicated as I tried to make it look there. Yeah, this makes it look more confusing, but I actually didn't change very much. Switch to query selector for WebAmp. Don't mind if I do. Done. Once again, what do we got next? So we have a whole other day of changes here that I did. Oh man, what are we at? 2 hours, 20 minutes? Okay. We're at we got a little Red Bull left. There we go. Let's see how far this can get us. Extract peak window component. Is this a big change or a small one? This is a nice one that it's minor. So I'm going to explain it and I'm just going to do it. So let's go to it here. Hopefully I don't say so too many times. Sorry guys if I do. I noticed myself saying it. So there we go. Within this hook, I was defining a component because it needs to be dynamic partially, and that I need this and this, I think. But instead I'm going to make this its own file because it's just a little cleaner that way. It mostly could live on its own, basically. So if we see, yeah, now I'm noticing all the times I say so, and I'm not happy about it. Let's look at it here. If we look, you see how I've removed a lot. Didn't need, so now we just have this peak window component, and we removed, and all these pieces were dependent on it. Oh, once again, this slipped back in. Darn it, stop doing that, Dustin. I keep trying to switch these mouse timers back to the ones I didn't have before. Is it the same here? Oh no, so I didn't need title. Title was part of peak window. We're gonna bring that into the component. We're gonna take the close icon with us, the use actions, which is for closing. We're gonna bring that into the component. I've once again messed this up. This sloppy copy pasting is changing things that don't need to change. There we go, that didn't need to change. Yeah, this is the only other change here. So here where before I was going peak window, now I'm just gonna say if it says show peak and there's a preview source, then the peak component will be this, where it's a peak window that I've built. I built another functional component here that's just a pre-made peak window that's got the ID already set and it's already got the image set based on this. And now we will make the generic version of peak window, which we'll put right here. We'll call it peakwindow.tsx because it's a TypeScript JSX file. And it's basically going to be what we just cut out of the other one. So this piece here is pretty much just what we cut out here. And now I'm passing in the ID so that I can get the title, which we're no longer getting from here. Sorry, we're no longer getting title from here, and now we bring on close into here. So we basically just extracted it out. Just it makes it a little smaller. And if we refresh here and we open, peak should still work. Yeah, there's our peak, so we can still peak. Peak, peak, peak. That was all that was. Nice and simple. Nice and simple extract. I like extracting out these components because then you have the files themselves become smaller, and it's like, do I want to think about that component? Go here. Do I want to think about how it displays? Go there. Versus both of those being like, go here and then try to parse out those pieces. Because even when you look at the diff, like there was, I mean, here it wasn't too hard. It was mostly just this, but it was like a little bit from up here, a little bit from in the middle, and a little bit from in the bottom. Versus now, it's just like very tiny. It's just, yeah, none of this exists. Don't need title, don't need any of that stuff up here. And it's just this one line here that says, give me the peak window. And I don't have to think about, well, what's the peak window? Oh, it's this, and it needs this, you know, that's somewhere else now. So extracting out functions really makes the code cleaner, and it makes it easier to expand upon, I feel. That was that. So here we get into some of the lazy loading. Right, so this is where I was pretty happy with this, where I was trying to clean things up. So let's do a test before we do lazy loading. I'm gonna kill some of these node windows. So we're gonna do a yarn build, and I wanna look at what the build size is. And while we're doing that, we'll just jump to the file that we're gonna change. It's in the taskbar. So the taskbar here, you see start menu component only appears when this is true. So it's not something that appears all the time. Because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the start menu, instead of coming from here and being imported, it's only going to dynamically be imported when needed, which is a part of Next.js. Oh, what happened there? What did I break? Oh, so I broke something earlier on. Whoops. Okay. So I'm not even going to save this yet. Before I save this change, let's fix whatever the heck I broke. Let's just jump here and see what it says. So for what is it saying here? Is not assignable to type process. Component window is missing. Oh, this is what happened earlier when I said component window is necessary. Right. It can't be necessary because then it would be necessary on definition. So let's go to where I defined that here, which is here. Right. So before this was like this, optional. But then that means we have to check here, I think. Yeah, here. Yeah, now it's complaining here because if both of these are optional, then it should have never ran that function. So we need this still. Preview element equals this or that. And then if there is a preview element, then we do the rest of this stuff. So, which is only this little piece here? Is that all that is? Yeah. Just the rendering of the frame, basically. There we go. So at one point we had this code and now it's back. So we need to check preview element because there is a possibility for both of these to be undefined. Not really though, because we're always going to set component window pretty much as soon as possible, but initially it's not set. So that's fair. So I should have never actually said it wasn't optional. So it is optional and we check for it here and that should fix the build. Let's check if the build's fixed. And the reason I wanted to do a build is because I wanted to see the bundle size and make sure that my next fix reduces it. So first let's name this commit and say make component window optional. Component window, like so. There we go. So the build's finished. So you see the build right now is 276 kilobytes. So let's close this, close that. So let's commit these two, that fix though, make component window optional. Oops. Let me just stage these two fixes so it doesn't complain. Just these two stage changes. There we go. Add that to the notes. And what was the build? 276. So let's make a note of that. 276 kilobytes. And now let's lazy load the start menu. And the reason we can lazy load it is because when the page loads, you don't see the start menu. You only see it when you click the start button. And now I've changed the code. I click the start button, still works. Oh wait, we're not running the dev environment right now, so it didn't actually work. It never refreshed. Reload the dev environment. There we go. So the start menu still works. So it works with this dynamic code. Now let's see. Is the build smaller than 276? It might not be because the start menu had very little in it. Or did it? I don't remember now. It should be a little less, I would expect. Less than 276. But let's see. A little drum roll. It takes a few seconds to build. And now it's 275. So there we go. So that was a minor one. Basically what we did is we just said that that start menu component, which is in here, which is where components, start menu, index. So this component here basically isn't in the initial bundle when the user visits the site. It's after you press the start button, it loads as an additional bundle, an additional network request. And it only saved as 1 kilobyte because there's not much here that isn't already being used somewhere else. So it's like very minor. But if I were importing some massive library here that's only needed here, it would have made a bigger difference. And we're going to see that in a little bit in some of my other changes. So load start menu. So let's rename that to lazy load start menu component. So that's that piece. Now I had a couple other ones, so let's take a peek at them. Actually, let's skip to, let's not do this first. Let's do a few more lazy loadings because they help. I enjoy them. Let's try this one here, HTML to image lazy load, because I did a couple of them and they were minor. Yeah, here's another one, another minor one. So this is for window peak. These ones are where I actually did a different kind of lazy loading that's not based on Next.js's dynamic, but it's based on the dynamic importing ability, which WebAMP Webpack will utilize properly to do proper bundle splitting, code splitting. So for window peek, when the window opens and it takes a little picture of that DOM element, it has to use a library called HTML to image. So instead of importing that right away and having to make it be part of the main library, again, this slipped in. Jeez. Eventually I'm gonna have this. There, don't change that. So really all that I've changed here is what? Why is this moved into this? Okay. Does that make sense what I've just done here? I don't think it does. I've moved the render frame function out a tiny bit. I don't think that's necessary. This piece is the only piece that needed to be like that. So let's copy this back and put this piece here where the 2PNG piece was. And, oh, what happened there? I need to delete that entire piece, and I'm missing a bracket or something. Yeah, I was missing one bracket. And then let me delete. Oh man, I'm confused here. What have I done? So I've added the, oh, okay. So render, what is render frame now? Let's go back to this page. So this is render frame. This is the only piece that needed to be conditional in that way. So before render frame was like this. I need to look at the before again to understand what the heck I've done. So before render frame was this, where it would do preview element and then do to PNG. And then this timer is separate from that. Okay, I see. I guess I just had, oh, okay. This is two changes. This is two changes I now realize. I don't want that. Let's undo that. And we'll do this in another fix. So I'm gonna, oh God, what am I just doing there? No. I'm gonna undo the change here, go back to the file, and try to get my mind straight here. So this is the way it looks right now. And what I wanted to do was for the 2PNG function, before we run 2PNG, all I wanted to do was this basically. Is the new way to, the other way to do it is you do import the library, then do what you want to do. And the then will give you all the modules. So in the same way that here, where you're, let me cut this out here and bring it down here. Oops. So essentially these are equivalent, but this one happens at build time, whereas this one happens at runtime. So this will allow code splitting to work better. So now I'm saying from that library, do this, and then take the 2PNG, which will come from right here, and do the exact same function where you do this 2PNG piece here. There. There we go. So that's really all that needed to change. Let's double check this. Yeah, there we go. So that looks much more simple. Now, the secondary change I did, I think is probably, it wasn't needed, but maybe we can just do it if it makes sense rationally. So what I have here is the mouse enters, and then it starts this timer where it tries to render, and then render frame happens. Oh, okay, so this import is happening every time. Is that okay? Does that make sense? Yeah, why not? So how did I have it in the code? I guess I had it so that, I think I moved this piece into here. I'm trying to understand why I would have done it the other way. No, this is all that render frame should have been doing. This makes sense. Render the frame is based on these elements. If the element found, import the library, which will cache, so this should only be a one-time thing. And then do your thing. And this should occur, yeah, okay. Oh, I get it. Maybe I should have checked this first. I think that's it. Let's do this in another step. Let's do this first. So, first off, let's make a note first. Let's make a note before I forget. So what we're doing now is we want to lazy load the HTML to image library. And then after that, what I want to do is I want to only render the frames if these elements exist. It's going to exist. It makes no sense otherwise. So maybe it can just be in... This doesn't need to happen every render frame then. Right. Okay. Yeah. Make render frame more efficient. That'll be the next one then. Sorry. So without further ado, let's see if my change improved the build size. And my expectation would be it would. Right now it's 275, if you remember. We're at 275. But HTML image was a somewhat large library, and now we have it. It only should happen when necessary, when render frame is ran. So it should make a good difference. We'll see. To the initial build. Yeah, well, that made almost no difference. 271, so 4 kilobytes. It's something. I feel like there was some other bigger change, but I don't think I've done it yet. So let's just keep working on making our way there. So lazy load HTML to image library. Yep, done. There. And then the next one was make render frame more efficient. So all I wanted to do for that was if we look at window peak here, I think, yeah. So if the mouse enters, is that when the element should be checked? This really only needs to be checked one time. If it exists, never check it again. At least not on render frame, because this render frame happens over and over again. So maybe, yeah, it could be here, I guess. And then would it be inferred? Let's not mess with this. This doesn't... So the mouse enters, it starts the timer, tries to render the frame. Every time it renders the frame, it makes sure the element exists and imports. That's fine. Make render frame more efficient? Let's not. I can't reason about why I did it, so let's not even waste our time with it. So that was another lazy load one we did. I thought there were some other lazy loads I wanted to do first. Here, load music library dynamically. That might have been one of the big ones. Yeah, here we go. This is another small change that I think makes a big difference. And it's again using the same technique that I want to use that I just used last time. So this is for the file entry function. I might even just do this one live. File entry functions, here it is. So let's just paste it and see, but I think I might have changed more than I wanted to. So again, it's getting rid of music meta, it's getting rid of an import from the top and bringing it in dynamically. So yeah, here I've done it with an async await, because in this case we're doing read file, so I can make this, I can do a little syntax sugar and just say here, hey, let's do async here, and then we'll await this import, where we do the same thing. We import them, and then we get parse buffer and select cover. And that's it. And I could have written this as a promise if I done like dot then, but then I have to indent everything by one level. Although maybe that's better. I don't have any other async syntax sugar. Maybe I will just do it this way, because that's more consistent with the other ones. Yeah, so let's just do that. And no async. There we go. So if you look here, nothing much changed. So basically it's doing just what it did before, but then when it runs this function, oh, this actually doesn't need brackets anymore. There we go. So we read the file just like before the MP3, but then we do that initial import step, and then we get parse buffer and select cover, whereas before we were importing them here. So this time I think we're going to make a bigger difference. What were we at now? Remember, it was like 271, I think our build was at. Let's see. 271. I think this change is a bigger one. This might be the one, because that album art calculation only needs to happen when you have an MP3 file. And it doesn't really add much to the load to do it dynamically. So when you have the opportunity to, I think it's worth it. Let's see here. Here we go, 203. So we just really dropped the bundle there. That was a big one, a big unnecessary one. So we were loading all the logic to calculate ID3 tags, album art cover, all that stuff, on the hope that someone would have an MP3 file that had an image in it on the desktop, because only the desktop icons happen on load. After the fact, hey, it happens when it happens. So let's just do a quick test here. If we reload the page, oh, it's not running. Let me run it again. And I'm going to drag in an MP3 and just make sure that the album art cover thing still works dynamically. So here, let's try it out. Boom. Yeah, there we go. And if we refresh the page, yeah, it loads fine. And it's a little bit thinner now. Little bit thinner bundle. So what did I name that change? Load music lib dynamically. I can be a bit more specific than music lib. Music metadata lib dynamically. There we go. So we did a bunch of lazy loads in a row there. I should have said lazy load here too. Lazy load music lib library. Too late to rename the other ones, but. So those were the 3 lazy loads. I wanted to group those together, but they're a little jumping around from the commits here. So we did the extract peak. We did start menu lazy. We skipped the download function. I guess it's time to get to the download function. That's a big one. And maybe let's skip it till the end, honestly. That's how big it is. What's this file actions refactor? Oh, that's part of the download one. Load dynamically, we just did. Oh, interesting here. I think I even switched to the promise syntax that I ended up doing in the final commit. Yeah, I actually changed back to it because I preferred it. So that commit we don't have to do either. The HTML one we already did. Updating packages. That's as simple as updating the packages. I might not even do that this episode. Perhaps I will, it's easy. And default state, I think I already did that one too. Yeah, for the 2 mistake ones that I made earlier that I didn't make mistakes on this time. So did it, gonna do it, did it, did it, did it. These 2 are connected. And that's that. So let's just do the last one is the download thing, I guess. So this is another cool feature, is basically when we right click files, let's say the session. So we open this file right here. I want to know what's in there. I have no way right now. I have delete and rename. But what if we could download it? That would be cool. So let's add it. So I've done this in 2 steps. There was this system I had for passing functions that I'm not happy with. And I'm going to clean it up. But first, we're just going to basically duplicate it, and we're not going to worry about it for the first go here. I think I can probably step through this one change at a time with you guys here. So the first thing is this file entry, right? So here's the piece I was talking about. So I have this delete file and rename file, and then I'm passing them in a few places. Then I have delete entry and rename entry. And the logic behind it is that in the use files hook, that's why I originally export them, delete and rename. The reason that delete and rename need to be there and can't be used from other hooks is because they're specific to this array of the files that you see in the file explorer. Like here, there's like an array that's kept track of. So when I rename the array first, and then I update the file. And when I delete it from the array. It's just the way I do it logistically. It makes sense for some reason, but long story short, I'm just going to do the exact same thing for download, and then I'm going to change it because it's getting repetitive doing all these exports. So let's do it here for the file entry. This is the file entry, and we'll see what we changed here. So we add a download file. It takes a path. We pass it along to the file entry, just like delete and rename. And we haven't put it in use context yet, but that's it for this piece. So this is just passing it along. This is the thing I want to tweak, is I want to pass just one object that has these file actions, like delete, download, and rename are actions that all have to get passed back to that use files hook. So here's where I've added the magic for the right-click menu. This is part of use context menu hook. So the right-click menu had to change a little bit. So again, I had to pass in the function for download file, just like I had to do for delete and rename. And there's 2 things I had to do here. So I've decided to switch from using this separator to do these little lines. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't switch to the code, darn it. So I just changed the use context menu code, this little piece here. We got the download file, and then you see here how it's saying group doesn't exist. Group used to be this thing I called separator, which when you right click a file, you see here there's this little, oh man, I never noticed that when you hover over it, it does that. That's not right. Actually, it's double not right. Oh, okay, no wait, no, that's okay. I think that's because of what I just did here where I pasted this. But before, the separator was a line. And I didn't really like that because it's like separator, and then you have to do this 1 or 2 or 3 to get a proper key index. But really what they are is groups. And I could even give them names. Like this group is the download upload group. This group is the open group, let's say. For now, I'm just going to do numbers for them, but I prefer to call it a group because before it was like separator. It's like, sure, it does separate stuff, but it separates groups. So I've decided to be more specific, and now the numbering is a little more sensible, I'd say, that way. So what I've done basically here, other than that group thing, all I really did was I moved the is shortcut logic up 1 level here. Also for the is shortcut logic, I don't know why I was checking the URL part. It's not necessary, really. So I've just switched shortcut to checking if the extension is a shortcut extension. And I also cache extension. Why? I don't know. I don't seem to. Oh no, I do need to. I need it here for this. So like before, this is still doing the is shortcut here to be used up here. That's still fine. But I also needed to use it here. So if it's not a shortcut and it has a URL, like a file has, and it either has an extension or the process that opens it isn't File Explorer. This is basically a way to filter out directories. So it's like if it's not a directory and it has a file extension. Now the reason why I double check this is it might not have a file extension, but if it's not something that opens in File Explorer, I'm still going to assume it's something you can download. That might come back to bite me later, but we can clean up this logic later. So in that case, we want you to have the ability to download it. So we're now going to say that instead of like separator 1 here, we're now going to say the first group can be this group and the second group can be this group. Doesn't really matter, these numbers, it's just for the keys. And then we just add the download button along with that download file function that we haven't defined yet. But basically, if we add the group logic now, we probably have enough. No, we don't have enough yet for download file to work properly. Let's just keep adding the file. Let's keep doing the changes. So we did this change. We just did this change. We have to do another change here where we keep passing stuff. There's so much passing going on. I'm not a fan of it. That's what we're going to clean up in the refactor. So the file manager also needs to pass along that same thing. So yeah, we take download file from the use files hook and we pass it to the file entry. Just keep passing it along, just like we do with delete and rename. Here's where we define the download function, but before we get to that, let's fix this group piece too. So right, wherever we were using separator, I wanted to change to using group. Because yeah, a separator is shown, but it's to separate groups. So that's why I wanted to do that, because it also makes the naming a lot cleaner. There we go. And here I suppose I could alphabetically fix it. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K. Wait, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. There we go. G, H, I. Okay, there we go. So we switched to using group. Now, if it's a group here, we're going to display an HR line. Otherwise, it's just a single item. And here, where did I do group? Where else did I do group? Right here. Either has a, yeah, so when you're making the menu item entry, either we use the label or we use the group ID. And the group could be a label as well. I mean, maybe let's do that, because then it's just, no, let's not for now. But at some point I might think of better group names for these, and then I'll give them proper names instead of numbers. Like, I mean, this is all about opening stuff. Open, open file, open with. So this group could be called the open group. And then this group here, downloading. I don't really have anything else that needs to be in here. And delete rename is kind of a whole group on by itself. Yeah, I'm not a fan of these groups yet, but I haven't thought of a better way to do this part yet. So for now, let's just do it this way, but this might change at some point because I'm not a huge fan of the way that I've done this part. I might even just do sub arrays and then consider those groups, but let's add it to the show notes for next time. Rethink group separator logic. Yeah. I'll work on that and get back to you guys. So that was the group stuff. Group. So all that's left now is the main function, the use files hook, where we actually change the darn thing. So use files, and let's see what we change. This is the meat and potatoes of it here. Use files. So again, download file, we had to declare it to pass it out. So here's where we have the key thing. So now we save this thing called the download link. So the download link is something I only need to generate one time. And the reason I only generate it once is it only, so if you click download and then you click download again, I guess you'd never click download again. What's the idea here? The download link, and then here it cleans it up. Oh, right. Okay, yeah. So to make a download link, when you have a file that's a buffer, we have to do our typical thing where we do buffer to URL. And the trick with these buffers is that they need to be cleaned up. So that's the reason that I've decided to do it like this, where I save its state. So we know that so when you click download, it's going to read the file every time, and it makes a link. It actually makes an HTML DOM element, create element anchor link, and then it sets its location to be that buffer to URL of the content. So from the file, you take the content and we turn it into a buffer URL. And then we also set this thing called the download variable, which is part of HTML5. We set it to the file name itself. That means that when you click that save, or when you click the link and it downloads it automatically, it'll give it the proper name instead of just some generic buffer URL name. And then what we do is we manually click that fake link without ever even needing to append it. It seems to work. I'm not sure if this works on every browser. It needs testing. But basically, this is the idea. You just create a link. You use the location is from the buffer URL. The download you set. And then we set the link here so that we have the state of it. And the reason for that is when the use file hook is destroyed, when the window is closed, we have another effect we've created, which is a destroy effect here that says if the person ever downloaded it and they created a download link, then clean up that buffer link, because now the folder's gone, basically. And that's the basic logic of it. Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else we needed to do for it. So in our final commit of the night, we're going to clean up this passing of delete, download, and rename to be one simple thing. But otherwise, we should have download. So let's test it out. So let's do a refresh here of the page, reload, and let's see. We open up File Explorer, and now if we right-click the session, now we have a download button. And when we click download, there we go, session.json. It actually legitimately downloaded it. And if I drag this onto my File Explorer and paste it, there we go. That's our actual real session that we're using that we've never been able to look at before because we never had access to get those files. Because I don't have anything currently to open JSON, and I never had a way to download it, but now we have a download. And we can use that for all these. And it didn't, and as you see for directories, we don't see download. For shortcuts, we don't see download either. That's correct. But if I right-click Linux and I go open file location, then I see Linux, then I click it, then I can go download. And there's Linux. Cool. Exactly as I wanted. And it did the cascading there too, which was nice. Ooh. Okay, so I think we're good there. So let us review what we just did there. We passed download file function through several layers, through the file manager, through the file entry, through the context menu. eventually getting to the context menu. We made a download button for it based on if it's the kind of thing that can be downloaded. Then we made the ability for download to work by making this link that gets clicked with the buffer URL. We clean it up when you close the folder, and that's it. Cool. So now we have the ability to download files. Added download file function. Nice. So we added the download file function, and I think for the last thing of the night, I'd like to just refactor that a little bit and just kind of clean it up, because I did take the time here. As you see here, I've gotten rid of delete, download, and rename, and I've turned it into this thing called file actions, and I've made a type for it. And you see it's allowed me to make things a lot cleaner. And okay, also I've done another piece here. Is the context menu before was getting passed in delete, download, and rename, which are being built here. Unnecessary. Those things are pretty much context menu specific, and they can be part of the use context menu hook. So we clean that up a lot. And then rename, and then the file actions here, we'll just do .rename file, because rename still needs to happen in the file entry because it actually visually changes the file entry itself, switching from a text of the file to a text input entry instead. So let's do that little commit there, or that little change, and just double check. So we don't have the file actions type yet. That's the next piece we'll do. We've removed these definitions here. We don't need those 3 pieces. They're all defined here now. We've switched the context menu to be simpler too. Now it just gets the file actions and it does all the work instead of those being defined here. So we've simplified that file, which is always nice. And this is the use context menu, right. Let's see what we did here. So in here, we've also used that type. Why is it separate here? It shouldn't be separate. That's a bug. It should be like that. Oh, it was imported incorrectly. That's a mistake I didn't notice last time. It should be imported like this. Sometimes when you do auto import, it tries to do those double dashes. I did not want them. I think this is how it's supposed to be. We'll come back to this piece. I think that's where I wanted that. Files, file manager, use files. That's where file actions will be? Yeah, okay. So here the context menu has been changed slightly. So instead of passing rename file as a function, we're just going to get the dispatch to change the file entry to say, put me into rename mode. And then the rename logic happens in the file entry because it's separate from the context menu. The context menu just puts you into rename mode. And as you see here now, that's what it's doing. So set renaming to true. Now this has its own function. So basically I just defined the functions here instead of passing them in. It's a lot cleaner and actually was able to keep it on a one line. That's that. And what is the file manager here is another piece. So we were able to shrink a lot of that passing instead of passing 3 or 4 things. 3 things, sorry. I'll show you what I mean here. Come on, load. I know you changed. You're right here. There we go. So yeah, now we got file actions instead of passing those 3 things. And we just pass file actions in instead of passing those 3. So, and another nice thing about this is if I want to add some other thing, upload file, I just add it to file actions and I don't have to go into these and change this again. So it's much nicer. And it also groups them because they are related things. And here's where we get to the piece where we had defined file actions. So it's in the use files. Oops, not the use file hook. Confusingly, I have a use file hook and I have a use files hook. But they logically do kind of mean very different things that are kind of explanatory enough. So same story. This one's different. Here I did something different. Right. Here before the export was all one big thing, and now it's 2 pieces. Now it's the file actions and the files, which takes out file actions, and the file actions are separate. Yeah, which is clear here. So instead of delete, download, and rename being separate, now they're all part of the file actions object, and files is outside of that. Another simple change, and yeah, now we have the file actions type, which we pretty much had before. We just isolated it to those 3 pieces, and that was it. That was it. That was all that needed to make that a lot more simple. And that was called the file actions refactor. Boy, we changed a lot this episode, actually. When you look at this list, it's like, that's actually a big list of stuff that we did. Let's commit that. So in the end, it still kind of looks like how the page looked the day when we loaded it earlier today. Now we have this cool download button here, which is nice. We also have the peak works a little different. We got cascading going on here. So yeah, slowly but surely we're adding to it. Let's just double check if we had any other commits that we missed. Extract peak, we did the lazy loading, downloading, refactoring, lazy loading, switching to promise, which those 2 were connected, lazy loading again, updating packages. I could do it really quick. Let's do it because we don't want to get behind. Usually it's the first thing we do. This time it's the last thing. Update packages. And I'll quickly show you the way that I do that, which is simply by doing, typically I do yarn outdated first because I like to know what I'm missing. So a lot is outdated right now. And then I just do yarn upgrade and I do -- latest so that it also so that it also upgrades the package.json file because I like that yarn does that automatically. Well, not automatically, I had to run the command, but you get what I mean. So it's going to update a bunch of stuff. Clearly, it looks like a bunch changed. And we'll do a build after this to see if anything broke, but hopefully nothing broke. So let's take a look at what changed here. Yeah, so a lot of stuff updated. Next.js, the music thing, a lot of my types. Big update. Now, before we do a commit, actually, let's do this commit. Whether it broke things or not, we need to keep moving forward with packages. I'll fix it next episode. But we can check here, if we open up our npm scripts and we just run a bunch of them, we can kind of see how it's doing. So let's say we want to run the test. Let's run prettier. Let's run stylint. Let's run ESLint. Let's see how those go first. So we see check mark from prettier, check mark from stylint, check mark from the test, and check mark from ESLint. So then we could do a build fs, we could do build, and presumably those work okay, then everything was fine. And we now have the newest packages plus all these changes that I did today, which was a good chunk of changes, really. And we just can push those next 11 commits. We're waiting for this build to pass here, but it looks like it's passing. Checked validity of my types. They all went through. Creating an optimized build. I also like to do export because sometimes export used to fail. And I just like to make sure that none of my stuff is going to fail, kind of. And now our package is only 203 kilobytes, which is pretty good because we were at like 276 at the start of this episode. So that's another thing we did by doing all that lazy loading. Cool. So it all built. That looks good. What happened here? This is that change I was talking about. Yeah, so this is an annoying change that keeps happening. Next, image types. I don't want this change. I'm going to undo this for now. But it won't stop happening, unfortunately. Maybe next episode, Next.js will fix that, and then I'll never have to deal with it. Boy, we updated packages. We're at 3 hours and 3 minutes. We did a bunch of changes. We had some drop-ins and some people saying hi. All together, I think it was a pretty successful show. Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you liked it, please throw me a like. If you want to support me, you want to keep me motivated, please subscribe. You can kind of see all my weekly streams. I do this every day from every week at 9 p.m. PST. Got a message here from Gant123 saying, have a good night. Thank you. Looks like you stayed all the way to the end. I'm happy to see. It looks like we had up to 6 people we had at one point, which is pretty cool. So thanks again, guys. I'll see you next week for more features and refactors and all that kind of fun stuff. So thanks again. Bye.